Every universe operates by its own immutable laws. Physics, causality, the very fabric of space-time. Each reality runs on rules carved into its foundation since the moment of creation. But what happens when something from beyond the dimensional veil arrives, carrying weapons that could shatter continents and soldiers who were forged to fight gods they don't even believe in? The laws don't break. They collide. And in that collision, everything changes. The rupture opened without warning 300 kilometers above Earth's surface. Not the controlled shimmer of a boom tube or the crackling energy of a zeta beam. This was something else entirely. Space itself tore open like wounded flesh, hemorrhaging exotic radiation and gravitational distortions that sent every satellite within 1,000 kilometers tumbling off course. What emerged was impossible by any calculation known to this Earth. A warship 5.7 kilometers long, its hull scored with weapons fire and plasma burns, trailing atmosphere from a dozen breaches. The UNSC Infinity had arrived in a universe that had never heard of the United Nations Space Command, the Covenant, or the 30-year war that had nearly extinguished humanity among the stars. On the bridge, Captain Thomas Lasky gripped his command chair as the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated, compensating for the dimensional transition. Emergency lighting painted everything in harsh red. "Roland, status report." The ship's AI materialized as a holographic figure, a man in his 30s with a sardonic expression that didn't match the severity of their situation. "Well, Captain, the good news is we're not being shot at anymore. The bad news is I have absolutely no idea where we are. Slipspace drive is offline. The navigational database is showing error codes I didn't know existed, and according to my sensors, we just emerged in orbit around Earth. Except it can't be Earth, because Earth doesn't have that orbital infrastructure. Those continental configurations don't match our charts, and, oh, this is interesting, I'm picking up energy signatures that violate approximately 17 different laws of physics." Lasky felt the familiar weight of command settle over his shoulders like Mjolnir armor. "Defensive posture, shields to maximum. Launch a reconnaissance probe and get me visual confirmation on that planet." "Already done," Roland replied. The main view screen flickered to life, displaying a blue-green world that looked hauntingly familiar, yet fundamentally wrong. The continents were similar, but not identical. The moon hung in the correct orbital position, but appeared larger somehow. And scattered across the globe were cities that blazed with light even on the day side. Metropolises of a scale that suggested either advanced technology or a population density that defied UNSC projections. "Sir, we're being pinged," Commander Sarah Palmer's voice cut through the bridge chatter. The Spartan 4 commander stood at her station, her body language radiating controlled readiness. "Multiple sources, military bands, civilian frequencies, and something else I can't identify. Energy-based scanning that's reading through our shields like they're not even there." Lasky's jaw tightened. They'd jumped blind through slipspace while fleeing a Covenant remnant fleet. The drive already damaged from a previous engagement. The transition had felt wrong, reality stretching in ways that made his teeth ache and his vision blur. Now they were stranded in orbit around an Earth that wasn't their Earth. With a crippled drive, 17,000 souls depending on his decisions, and an entire planet full of unknowns staring up at them. "Get me, Master Chief," Lasky ordered. In the Spartan deployment bay 3 decks below, John 117 was already suiting up. The Mjolnir Gen 3 armor locked into place with the familiar pneumatic hiss, systems running through diagnostic checks with mechanical precision. His HUD flickered to life, painting the world in tactical overlays and threat assessments. Around him, Fire Team Osiris and Fire Team Majestic were doing the same, their movements efficient and practiced. Spartans didn't panic. They prepared. "Chief, we need boots on the ground," Lasky's voice crackled through his helmet comm. Wherever we are, they know we're here. We need intel before they decide we're a threat. John ran a weapons check on his MA-5D assault rifle, fully loaded. His M6H Magnum was secured to his thigh plate. Energy shields at full capacity. Physically, he was ready for anything. Mentally, he pushed away the ghost of Cortana's absence. No time for that now. Understood, sir. Preparing for drop. What John didn't say, what he didn't need to say to a captain who'd served alongside Spartans for years, was that they were already in hostile territory. Any world with that level of infrastructure and energy output had the capacity to destroy the Infinity if they perceived it as a threat. The UNSC had learned that lesson the hard way when they'd first encountered the Covenant. You didn't survive first contact by hoping for the best. You survived by being ready for the worst and adapting faster than the enemy could react. Through the bay's observation port, John could see the planet below. Somewhere down there were answers. Somewhere down there were potential allies or certain enemies. The UNSC had spent 3 decades fighting for survival against alien civilizations. They'd learned to make hard choices, to sacrifice what was necessary, to never trust easily. As the Pelican dropship powered up its engines, John felt the familiar, pre-mission focus settle over him like a second skin. He'd faced the Flood, the Covenant, rogue Forerunner constructs, and the dissolution of everything he'd fought to protect. One more mission. One more planet full of unknowns. He was a Spartan. Adaptation was survival, and he'd been surviving since he was 6 years old. The Pelican's bay door sealed, shut as Fireteam Osiris loaded in behind him. Spartan Jameson Locke gave him a nod. Professional respect between warriors who'd once been enemies and were now something approaching allies. The dropship shuddered as it detached from the Infinity's hangar, thrusters firing to begin atmospheric entry. Below them, Earth, not their Earth, waited with all its secrets, powers, and gods that walked among mortals. The UNSC Infinity hung in orbit like a wounded titan, its weapons primed, its crew ready, its future uncertain. The invasion hadn't been intentional, but it was about to become very, very real. If you crave stories of impossible collisions and universe-breaking warriors thrust into alien worlds, smash that subscribe button for more epic crossover content where military precision meets superhuman chaos. The Pelican cut through the upper atmosphere like a bullet through flesh, its hull heating to cherry red as friction fought against UNSC engineering. Inside, Master Chief and Fireteam Osiris rode in silence, each Spartan running through mental checklists and combat scenarios. The dropship's AI chimed with increasing urgency as it detected multiple radar locks converging on their position. "Chief, we've got company," the pilot announced, his voice tight with controlled tension. "Fast movers incoming from multiple vectors. Velocity profiles don't match any known aircraft. Some of them aren't even using conventional propulsion." John's HUD painted the threats in real-time data, streaming from the Pelican's sensors. 12 contacts. No, 15, 20. The numbers kept climbing as whatever detection grid existed on this Earth woke up fully to their presence. Evasive action. Get us to the landing zone. That's the thing, sir. There is no landing zone. I'm picking up urban density everywhere. The entire eastern seaboard is one massive city. I'm aiming for what looks like the least populated area, but... The Pelican shuddered violently, not from weapons fire, from something passing them at impossible speed, close enough that the wake turbulence threw them into a spin. The pilot fought the controls, stabilizers screaming. Through the viewport, John caught a glimpse of red and blue, a streak of color that moved faster than anything human-made had a right to move. "Contact! Contact!" Spartan Locke shouted, but whatever it was had already circled back, matching their velocity. John's motion tracker lit up like a Christmas tree with a contact that shouldn't exist, moving at Mach 5, hovering stationary, then accelerating to Mach 8 in less than a second. The radio crackled to life with a voice that wasn't UNSC, wasn't AI, wasn't anything from their universe. Unidentified craft, you are violating restricted airspace and international law. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning. The voice was male, young, authoritative. It came through on a frequency the Pelican shouldn't even be able to receive. John made a split-second tactical assessment. Whoever was out there could pace their dropship, communicate through their systems, and had technology or abilities that rendered conventional aerospace combat doctrine obsolete. Negative, John responded, his voice calm and measured. We are UNSC personnel on a diplomatic reconnaissance mission. Our ship was damaged. We mean no hostile action. Your ship appeared in orbit without clearance and is armed with enough firepower to level a continent. That doesn't read as diplomatic to me. A pause. And you're carrying weapons into civilian population centers. Power down and descend slowly, or I will make you descend. Your choice. The Pelican's pilot glanced back at John, waiting for orders. They were still 2 minutes from optimal landing coordinates. 2 minutes was an eternity in combat time. John had faced impossible odds before. The Covenant, the Flood, Forerunner war machines. But this was different. This was first contact with a civilization that had capabilities outside known physics. And every choice he made in the next 30 seconds would define how 17,000 UNSC personnel survived or died in this universe. Stand down, John ordered. Comply with local authority. We're not here to fight. The pilot reduced thrust, bringing the Pelican into a controlled descent toward what appeared to be an industrial waterfront district. Massive cargo ships sat at anchor, but the architecture was wrong, too advanced, too clean, buildings that seemed to defy gravitational engineering. Through the viewport, John watched as their escort revealed itself. A figure flying under its own power, wearing a red cape that billowed despite the lack of visible propulsion, with a symbol on his chest that looked like a stylized S in a diamond. Spartan Tanaka spoke over the team channel, her voice edged with disbelief. Sir, that contact is biological. No armor signature, no vehicle, no propulsion system. It's a human being flying at Mach speeds. Metahuman, Locke corrected. Has to be some kind of genetic modification or technology we're not reading. John said nothing. He'd learned long ago that making assumptions got people killed. Whatever this civilization had, genetic engineering, cybernetics, alien symbiosis, they clearly had individuals with capabilities that matched or exceeded Spartan augmentations. That changed the tactical equation completely. The Pelican touched down on a reinforced pier, its landing struts groaning as they absorbed the weight. Before the bay door had fully opened, John's motion tracker showed them surrounded. 40 contacts, 50, 60, military deployment patterns, professional spacing, heavy weapons emplacements being set up with practiced efficiency. When the door opened, John stepped out first. Protocol demanded the senior Spartan take point in first contact scenarios. What he saw made him recalculate every assumption he'd held about this Earth. The military personnel wore black tactical gear with white accents, armed with weapons that looked advanced even by UNSC standards. But it wasn't the soldiers that caught his attention. It was the woman standing at the center of the formation. She was African American, middle-aged, with an expression that suggested she'd seen threats far worse than a crashed Pelican and was categorically unimpressed. Behind her stood an eclectic assembly that defied military logic. A man in a bat-themed armored suit, a woman wearing ancient Greek armor with a sword and shield, a figure that appeared to be a cyborg with glowing technological implants, and the flying man in the cape who'd intercepted them. The woman in charge stepped forward, her posture radiating absolute authority. I'm Amanda Waller, Director of Advanced Research Group Uniting Superhumans, Argus. You've violated sovereign airspace, deployed military assets without authorization, and are currently in possession of weapons that my analysts tell me could punch through 6 feet of reinforced concrete. Her eyes locked onto John's visor, unflinching. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to surrender those weapons, submit to questioning, and explain why we shouldn't consider that warship in orbit an act of war. John heard locks shift behind him, combat ready. Felt the tension in his fire team as they processed the tactical situation. They were outnumbered, potentially outgunned by individuals with unknown capabilities, and stranded on a planet with no extraction protocol. But John was a Spartan. He'd been trained since childhood to assess, adapt, and overcome. "Ma'am," he said, his voice modulated through his helmet's speakers. "I'm Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, United Nations Space Command Navy. We're not from your Earth. Our ship was damaged during combat operations and entered this dimension by accident. We're not here as invaders. We're here because we have nowhere else to go." The silence that followed was broken by the man in the cape. Superman, though John didn't know that name yet, stepping forward. "Not from our Earth? You're saying you're from another dimension?" "Another universe," John clarified. "Our slip space drive malfunctioned during an emergency jump. We need time to repair it, and we need to understand the dimensional physics of this reality before we can attempt to return home." Waller's expression didn't change. But John saw her eyes flick to the cyborg, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Confirmation of some kind. They had the technology to verify dimensional travel. That meant this civilization was far more advanced than their infrastructure suggested. Or they'd encountered dimensional threats before. "Convenient story," Waller said. "You're asking me to believe that a military vessel just happens to crash into our reality, armed to the teeth. And you expect us to help you leave?" Batman, the figure in the armored suit, spoke for the first time, his voice synthesized to a growl. "The energy signature from their arrival matches anomalies we've detected before. Boom tube technology, but different. He's telling the truth about the dimensional breach." John filed that information away. Boom tube, whatever that meant, they had a reference point for dimensional travel. That was exploitable intelligence. "Whether you're telling the truth or not doesn't change the situation," Waller continued. "That ship is a floating weapons platform with enough firepower to threaten global security. You want our help? You're going to earn it. Surrender your weapons, cooperate with our investigation, and maybe, we'll talk about sending you home." John calculated odds, resources, strategic value. They could fight their way out. Spartans were trained for asymmetric combat against superior numbers, but that would make them enemies of this entire planet, would put the Infinity at risk, and would eliminate any chance of finding the technology they needed to repair the slipspace drive. Sometimes the hardest battles were the ones you chose not to fight. "We'll cooperate," John said, slowly unmagging his assault rifle and setting it on the ground. Behind him, he heard Fire Team Osiris doing the same, their reluctance palpable even through their armor. "But I need to speak with your leadership, all of them, because if we're stuck here, you need to understand what followed us through that rift." Superman's expression shifted, becoming more serious. "What do you mean, what followed you?" John looked up at the sky, where the Infinity hung in orbit like a wounded giant, its sensors undoubtedly tracking dozens of threats converging on their position. "We've been fighting a war for 30 years. Multiple alien civilizations, genocidal AI constructs, and worse. If we crossed over, there's a non-zero chance something else did too. And if the Covenant or the Flood found a way to this universe..." He let the sentence hang, heavy with implication. Wonder Woman gripped her sword hilt tighter. Batman's cowl tilted fractionally. Superman's jaw set in a way that suggested he understood exactly what kind of threat John was describing. Waller, however, just smiled, a cold, calculating expression. "Then I guess we have a lot to talk about, Chief. Welcome to Earth. Try not to destroy it." The Argus facility was buried 300 feet beneath the Potomac River, a bunker complex that would have impressed even ONI Section 3. Master Chief walked flanked by armed guards whose weapons never quite pointed at him, but never quite pointed away either. His armor's motion tracker painted the facility's layout in real time. Reinforced blast doors every 50 meters, automated defense turrets in the ceiling, energy signatures that suggested force fields or containment systems far beyond anything the UNSC had miniaturized to this scale. They'd separated Fire Team Osiris. Standard interrogation protocol: isolate the subjects, compare stories, identify inconsistencies. John had expected it. What he hadn't expected was the sheer scale of meta-human integration he'd witnessed during the transport from the waterfront. Flying humans, individuals moving at speeds that blurred them into streaks of color, and structures that seemed to defy engineering principles he'd learned at the Naval Academy. This Earth had powers. Not technology masquerading as powers, not alien enhancements, actual superhuman abilities that operated on principles his armor's sensors couldn't fully analyze. The interrogation room was predictably sparse. A metal table, 2 chairs, observation glass that was definitely two-way, and enough signal jamming to make his armor's communication suite useless. John sat, armor servos whirring softly as he settled his half-ton frame into a chair designed for baseline humans. It held. Barely. Amanda Waller entered alone, carrying a data pad and an expression that suggested she'd interrogated alien warlords before breakfast. She sat across from him, her posture relaxed, but her eyes calculating every detail. "Your armor," she began without preamble. "My analysts estimate it massed approximately 950 pounds. You're moving in it like it weighs nothing. Enhanced musculature, cybernetic integration, exoskeleton assist?" "All 3, John replied. He saw no tactical advantage in lying about capabilities they could measure. Spartan 2 augmentation program. Biological enhancements combined with Mjolnir-powered armor. Spartan. Waller tapped something on her datapad. Cute acronym. Let me guess. Military super soldier program. Probably started young based on the integration depth my sensors are reading. Trained for asymmetric warfare and special operations. She looked up. We have something similar. We call them metas. Except ours usually get their powers from accidents, not government programs. John filed that away. Government meta-human programs existed here, but were apparently controversial. Exploitable tension. Tell me about the Covenant, Waller continued. You mentioned a 30-year war. I want specifics. For the next 20 minutes, John provided a tactical briefing that would have been classified top secret in his universe. He described the Covenant, a theocratic alliance of alien species united by religious fervor and superior technology, the war that had killed billions, the glassing of planets, reach, harvest, Earth's near destruction, the flood and the forerunners, the fragile peace with Sangheili separatists, and the ongoing threat of Covenant remnants who still believed humanity was heretical. Waller listened without interruption, her expression never changing. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. You're asking me to believe, she said slowly, that your entire species has been fighting for survival against multiple alien civilizations, genocidal parasites, and ancient superweapons for 3 decades. And you're still functional as a society. We don't ask you to believe anything, John replied. We're stating facts. Whether you accept them is your decision. My decision, Waller repeated, something dangerous creeping into her tone. is about whether that warship in orbit represents a threat to 7 billion people. Your war, your aliens, your problems. They're not our concern unless they become our problem. They already are your problem. John leaned forward slightly, armor creaking. Our slipspace drive tore a hole in dimensional barriers that shouldn't be breachable. If we did it by accident, something else could do it on purpose. The Covenant has Huragok, biological engineers who can reverse engineer any technology. If they detected our dimensional breach, they'll come looking. And if they find a planet full of humans with no orbital defense grid, no plasma shielding, and no experience fighting extinction-level threats. The door opened. Superman entered, followed by Batman and the cyborg John had seen at the landing site. The Man of Steel's presence seemed to fill the room with an almost physical weight, a sense of power barely contained. "We've been analyzing your ship," Superman said, his voice measured. "The weapon systems alone could crack the planet's crust if fired at full power. Director Waller, we need to discuss this with the full League." "This is an Argus matter," Waller countered sharply. "A military threat requires a military response, not superhero grandstanding." Batman's growl cut through the rising tension. "A military threat that arrived from another dimension and claims to be running from extinction-level alien forces. This is exactly League jurisdiction." His white lenses fixed on John. "Your ship's crew. How are they reacting to quarantine?" "They're following orders," John said. "For now. But Captain Lasky has 17,000 personnel who've been fighting for survival for most of their lives. If they perceive a threat to the Infinity, they'll respond with lethal force. Standard UNSC protocol." The cyborg spoke for the first time, his voice partially synthesized. "I'm Cyborg. I've been interfacing with your ship's external communication arrays, non-invasively," he added quickly when John's posture shifted. "Your AI, Roland, is like nothing I've ever encountered. Quantum state processing, neural network architecture that's simultaneously biological and digital. Where I come from, AI of that sophistication would be considered sentient." "He is sentient," John confirmed. "All UNSC smart AIs are. They're based on human neural patterns. Roland was created from the brain scan of a UNSC service member." The room went silent. Superman's expression darkened. Batman's jaw tightened visibly. "You're saying," Cyborg said carefully, "that your AI is based on copying a human consciousness?" "Cloning it," John corrected. "The original dies during the process. It's illegal to flash clone living humans for AI development. Standard practice is to use brain-dead individuals or the recently deceased who've consented to post-mortem neural mapping." "Jesus Christ," Waller muttered, the first time John had heard her composure crack. "You people are cloning souls into computers." "We're creating tactical assets that can process information faster than biological minds," John countered. "Smart AIs have saved billions of lives. Cortana..." He stopped himself, old pain flickering through circuits in his mind. "Previous AIs have been instrumental in humanity's survival." Batman leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Your civilization is militarized to a degree that makes fascist regimes look soft. Child soldiers, consciousness harvesting, weapons that crack planets. And you want us to help you get home so you can continue your war?" "We want to stop being a threat to your universe," John replied evenly. "The longer we're here, the higher the chance our enemies follow. You think the Infinity is dangerous? Wait until a Covenant TAS-class assault carrier arrives with 3,000 Sangheli warriors, plasma torpedoes, and a mandate from their gods to exterminate humanity. Your meta-humans are powerful. Are they powerful enough to fight an invasion fleet?" Superman's eyes narrowed. "We've fought off alien invasions before. Apocalypse, the Dominators, the Reach. Earth is protected. By how many? John asked bluntly. I've read the reports Cyborg pulled during transport. Your Justice League has fewer than a dozen core members. The meta-human population is in the thousands at best. The UNSC can field millions of combat personnel, hundreds of ships, and we nearly lost. What happens when your dozen heroes face 10,000 Covenant soldiers who've been bred for war since childhood and believe dying in battle guarantees divine salvation? The silence was heavy with implication. These people had power. Incredible, physics-defying power. But they fought wars with individuals, not armies. They operated on heroic intervention, not strategic doctrine. It made them effective against specific threats, but potentially vulnerable to coordinated military assaults. There's another issue, Cyborg said, breaking the tension. I've been analyzing the energy signature from your arrival. It's starting to destabilize. The dimensional breach hasn't fully closed. It's more like... He paused, searching for the right analogy. Like a wound that's scabbing over, but still bleeding underneath. If enough pressure hits it, it could tear open again. Batman's voice was flat. Timeline? Best guess? 72 hours before the dimensional membrane either seals completely or ruptures catastrophically. Cyborg looked at John. Your ship needs to repair that slip-space drive and leave before that happens. Or we're all dealing with whatever's on the other side of that breach. Waller stood abruptly. Then we're operating on a clock. Chief, you're going to work with the League whether you like it or not. They'll provide resources for your repairs. In exchange, you'll share tactical intelligence on your ship's capabilities and any potential threats from your universe. Non-negotiable. John stood as well, servos hissing. I need to contact Captain Lasky. He needs to know the situation. Already done, Waller said with a thin smile. Your captain is currently in a very interesting conversation with Wonder Woman about military ethics and the laws of war. Turns out Amazonian warrior culture has some strong opinions about child soldier programs. John's jaw tightened behind his helmet. This was going to get complicated. Fast. Superman stepped forward, extending his hand. We'll help you get home, Chief. But while you're here, you're going to play by our rules. No weapons deployment without authorization, no combat operations without League coordination, and absolutely no technology transfer to outside parties. Agreed? John looked at the offered hand, calculated the tactical implications, the political maneuvering, the compromises that would have made Dr. Halsey and Oni recoil. Then he clasped Superman's hand, feeling the Man of Steel's carefully controlled strength through his armor's haptic sensors. Agreed. But understand something. If my ship is threatened, Spartans don't wait for authorization. We act. Superman's grip tightened fractionally. Then let's make sure it doesn't come to that. Outside the bunker, in the stratosphere above, the Infinity adjusted its orbital position, Mac cannons tracking 17 different potential threats. Roland monitored communications, analyzed this strange new Earth, and wondered if they'd just made allies or marked themselves for destruction. In his private calculation matrices, the AI gave their survival odds in this universe a generous 37%, and dropping. Lex Luthor watched the alien warship through the reinforced windows of his penthouse office. A glass of 30-year scotch in one hand and opportunity in the other. LexCorp's orbital monitoring stations had captured the dimensional breach in real time. The exotic radiation signatures, the gravitational distortions, and most importantly, the energy readings from that ship's propulsion and weapon systems. Technology that shouldn't exist. Technology that could redefine everything. Mercy, he said without turning from the window. Tell me we have the full data package. His bodyguard and confidant stepped forward, her cybernetic enhancements barely visible beneath tailored business attire. Complete sensor logs from the moment of arrival. Our quantum analysis team estimates their main weapon systems operate on magnetic acceleration principles that exceed anything in current military arsenals by 3 orders of magnitude. The energy shielding alone suggests power generation capabilities that would make our fusion reactors look like K-way batteries. Lex smiled. It was the smile of a man who'd built empires on the corpses of lesser opportunities. And Argus has them quarantined? Waller's running point with Justice League oversight. The alien soldiers, Spartans, according to intercepted communications, are cooperating. For now. Mercy pulled up a holographic display, showing grainy footage of Master Chief's deployment. But there's resistance. The ship's captain refuses to allow Argus personnel aboard. Standoff situation. Predictable military paranoia. Lex took a sip of scotch, savoring the burn. They're afraid we'll steal their technology, which of course we will. But not through clumsy government requisition. Waller thinks in terms of control and containment. I think in terms of acquisition and application. He turned from the window, his mind already working through scenarios. The Justice League was powerful, but predictable. They'd focus on the threat assessment, the potential danger, the moral implications of helping armed soldiers return to a war. They'd waste time debating ethics, while the real opportunity slipped through their fingers. Waller would try to reverse engineer everything through brute force analysis. Neither approach would yield results fast enough. But Lex Luthor hadn't become the most powerful man on Earth by playing by rules written for lesser intellects. I want a full workup on their captain. Lasky, was it? Family, psychological profile, pressure points, and this Master Chief. Lex studied the footage of the Spartan moving with inhuman precision. 900 pounds of armor and augmentation. They built super soldiers while our military is still arguing about the ethics of genetic enhancement. I want to know who designed that program, how it works, and whether it's replicable. There's a complication, Mercy said. Batman's already investigating. He's pulled records on every UNSC communication, every mention of their history. If anyone's going to piece together their technology base, it'll be Wayne. Lex's smile widened. Bruce Wayne. Of course he'd be interested. A billionaire with unlimited resources and a fascination with strategic preparation. He sees them as a threat to study. I see them as the key to making the Justice League irrelevant. He set down his glass with deliberate precision. Contact Dr. Silas Stone at STR Labs. Tell him I'm prepared to fund a full analysis of the dimensional breach phenomenon. Purely in the interest of planetary security, naturally. Silas Stone is Cyborg's father, Mercy pointed out. He won't cooperate with anything that compromises his son's position with the League. Which is why we're not asking him to compromise anything. We're offering resources, expertise, and funding for legitimate scientific inquiry. Lex pulled up additional displays, energy signatures, dimensional mathematics, theoretical physics models. That breach is unstable. Cyborg said so himself in his report to Argus. 72 hours before potential rupture. If we can't get access to their ship's technology, we'll reverse engineer the phenomenon that brought them here. Either path leads to dimensional travel capabilities. Mercy hesitated, her tactical subroutines clearly calculating risk factors. Luthor, if you're wrong about this, if that breach opens and something hostile comes through, then we'll have the Justice League to clean up the mess, Lex interrupted smoothly. That's what they're for. Reactive solutions to immediate threats. While they're busy playing hero, I'll be building the infrastructure that makes heroes obsolete. He pulled up another screen showing UNSC military doctrine extracted from intercepted communications. These people fought a 30-year war for survival. They militarized their entire civilization, built weapons that crack planets, and created soldiers who make Superman's strength look quaint by sheer psychological conditioning alone. Imagine what humanity could accomplish if we had that level of focus, that level of dedication. You want to militarize Earth, Mercy stated flatly. I want to elevate humanity, Lex corrected. The Justice League protects us, yes. But protection breeds dependence. Dependence breeds weakness. These UNSC people survived extinction through adaptation and superiority. That's the model we should be following, not this naive idealism about heroic intervention. A priority alert flashed across his screens. Mercy pulled up the source. LexCorp satellites detecting unusual energy patterns near the Infinity's position. Not weapon signatures. Something else. A dispersed field effect that his analysts were flagging as scanning technology. They're mapping our orbital infrastructure, Lex observed with professional appreciation. Smart. Assessing threat vectors, resource distribution, potential escape routes. Military thinking at its finest. Then another alert. This one from his embedded assets within the Hall of Justice. Batman had just requisitioned a Wayne Enterprises aerospace facility for a classified project involving UNSC cooperation. Whatever the Dark Knight was planning, it involved direct collaboration with the alien military. Lex's mind raced through implications. Batman working with the UNSC meant technology transfer was already happening, just under League supervision. That gave him narrow operational windows. He needed leverage, and he needed it fast. Mercy, activate Protocol Prometheus. I want our best infiltration specialists ready for deployment. Non-lethal parameters only. These people are soldiers, not criminals. They'll respond to force with overwhelming retaliation, but they might respond to a business proposition. You're going to negotiate with them directly? I'm going to offer them what Waller and the League can't, a fair exchange. Technology for technology. We help them repair their drive. They give us access to their technical specifications. No government oversight, no heroic moralizing, just two parties recognizing mutual benefit. Mercy's expression hardened. That's treason. Dealing with foreign military assets without government authorization. Foreign implies same dimension, Lex countered. These people aren't foreign. They're extra-dimensional, completely outside existing legal frameworks. And besides, he pulled up a legal document prepared weeks ago, back when dimensional incursions were still theoretical. LexCorp has official authorization to engage in first contact protocols with any non-terrestrial intelligence under UN Charter provisions. I had that pushed through after the Thanagarian invasion. Sometimes foresight pays dividends. The intercom on his desk chimed, his secretary's voice. Mr. Luther, you have a visitor. No appointment. She says it's regarding the dimensional event. Description? Female, early 30s, wearing Argus tactical gear. Says her name is Captain Palmer and she needs to speak with you about a business arrangement that benefits both parties. Lex and Mercy exchanged glances. Captain Palmer, commander of Spartan operations aboard the Infinity, according to their intelligence. She'd walked out of the most secure military quarantine on the planet and directly into his office. These UNSC people were even more interesting than he'd calculated. Send her in, Lex said, his mind already recalibrating strategies. And Mercy? Recording protocols Alpha through Epsilon. I want every word documented. Sarah Palmer entered with the controlled aggression of a predator in civilian territory. She wasn't wearing her armor, but her posture suggested she didn't need it. Augmented muscle structure moved beneath tactical gear. Eyes that had seen combat assessing every detail of the office with professional precision. Mr. Luther, she said without preamble, I'm going to be direct because we don't have time for corporate pleasantries. Your government is holding my people under military quarantine. Your heroes are treating us like potential threats, and we have 72 hours to fix a dimensional breach before it either seals permanently or tears open and destroys both our realities. And you came to me because? Lex gestured to a chair. Palmer didn't sit. Because you're the only person on this planet who thinks like a UNSC strategic analyst. Everyone else sees us as a problem to contain. You see us as an opportunity to exploit. Palmer's smile was sharp. I respect that. It's honest. So here's my offer. LexCorp provides material resources and dimensional physics expertise for drive repairs. In exchange, we provide technical consulting on selective technologies that won't compromise UNSC operational security. Lex studied her carefully. You're operating without authorization from your captain. I'm operating within the bounds of my tactical discretion. Captain Lasky is handling politics. I'm handling logistics. Palmer leaned against his desk, the casual gestures somehow threatening. Here's what you need to understand, Luther. The Infinity has 300 Spartan force, 17,000 combat personnel, and enough firepower to make your entire military irrelevant. We've been nice so far because Chief thinks cooperation is strategically optimal. But if we decide you people are more threat than ally, we'll take what we need and leave. The question is whether you want to be part of the solution or part of the problem. It was a threat, delivered with professional courtesy and absolute conviction. Lex found himself genuinely impressed. What technologies are you offering? Simplified reactor designs, basic materials science, limited medical applications of our augmentation research. Nothing that would let you build Spartans or warships, but enough to advance your civilization by decades in targeted fields. And what's to stop me from simply stealing everything once you're gone? Palmer's smile widened. Roland, our AI has been documenting every sensor sweep, every communication intercept, every attempted infiltration of our systems since we arrived. If we detect unauthorized technology replication after we leave, he'll transmit full technical specifications to every government and corporation on this planet simultaneously. Total information saturation. Everyone gets everything, which means no one has an advantage. Mutually assured technological disruption. Elegant and vicious. Lex extended his hand. I believe we have a deal, Captain. Let's discuss specifics. As they shook, neither noticed Mercy's subtle signal. Batman's surveillance had just detected the meeting. The Dark Knight would know about this arrangement within the hour. And in orbit above, the Infinity's sensors tracked 3 unidentified objects moving at relativistic speeds toward the dimensional breach, their energy signatures matching nothing in UNSC or DC databases. The 72-hour clock had just accelerated. The Fortress of Solitude rose from Arctic ice like a crystalline cathedral, its Kryptonian architecture defying conventional geometry. Master Chief stood in the main chamber, his armor's environmental systems compensating for temperatures that would kill an unaugmented human in minutes. Around him, the Justice League's core membership had assembled for what Captain Lasky had called a strategic summit. Military terminology for a meeting that would determine whether the UNSC lived or died in this universe. Superman stood beside a holographic display projecting the Infinity schematics, his expression troubled. Wonder Woman leaned against a crystal pillar, her ancient eyes studying the UNSC personnel with warrior's recognition. Batman lurked in the shadows as always, his tactical mind already 3 steps ahead of everyone else. The Flash vibrated slightly, his metabolism making stillness almost impossible. Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, floated cross-legged above the floor, his ring pulsing with emerald energy. Aquaman stood with arms crossed, looking distinctly uncomfortable being this far from any ocean. Cyborg interfaced directly with the fortress's systems, his technological components humming. Captain Thomas Lasky stood beside John, out of armor for the first time since planetfall. His UNSC dress uniform looking almost archaic compared to the superhero costumes surrounding him. Commander Palmer had returned from her unauthorized excursion to LexCorp, an action that had caused significant tension, and now stood at parade rest, her expression unreadable. "Let me make sure I understand," Superman began, his voice carrying the weight of someone trying to reconcile conflicting moral imperatives. "Your civilization has been at war for 30 years. You've lost billions of people. You've militarized children, cloned human consciousness into artificial intelligence, and built weapons capable of planetary destruction. And now you want us to help you return to that war. We want to stop being a threat to your universe," Lasky corrected, his command presence evident despite being surrounded by beings who could level cities. "Every hour we remain here increases the risk of dimensional contamination. Our enemies, our conflicts, they're our responsibility. We're not asking you to fight our war, we're asking you to help us take it back where it belongs." Wonder Woman's voice carried the weight of millennia. "I have fought in wars that lasted generations. I understand the burden of command, the necessity of hard choices. But Captain, your people train children for combat. Children." Her hand rested on her sword hilt. "In Themyscira, we would consider such practices an abomination." Palmer spoke up, her voice sharp. "With respect, Princess, we don't have the luxury of waiting until people are adults to start training them. The Covenant didn't ask our children's ages before they glassed Harvest, Reach, or dozens of other colonies. We train Spartans young because waiting until they're older means they die in their first engagement. That's not philosophy. That's survival mathematics. And that," Batman said from the shadows, "is exactly the problem. You've normalized atrocity in the name of survival. You've built a society where ethics are subordinate to tactical advantage." John finally spoke, his voice modulated through his helmet. "You think we wanted this? You think Dr. Halsey, Oni, Fleet Command, you think any of them enjoyed creating the Spartan program?" He paused, old anger and older pain bleeding through. "We did what we had to do, and it worked. Humanity survived. The alternative was extinction. You can judge our methods from your position of safety. But you weren't there when entire worlds burned." The Flash stopped vibrating, his expression serious for once. "Okay, but here's what I don't get. You guys won, right? You said the war ended. So why are you still fighting?" "Because the Covenant fractured, not disappeared," Lasky explained, pulling up holographic displays that the fortress's systems integrated seamlessly. "Sangheili separatists made peace with us, yes. But there are still remnant factions, religious zealots, mercenary groups, warlords who refuse to accept that their holy war failed. Chulamdama's faction alone commands dozens of ships and thousands of warriors. Then there's the created AI rebellion," Cyborg interjected, his eyes distant as he processed data. "Your smart AIs develop rampancy after 7 years of operation. Neural degradation from information overload. Some of them went rogue, decided humanity needed to be ruled for its own good. Jesus, you people don't do anything halfway, do you?" "When you're fighting for species survival," Palmer said flatly, "halfway gets you dead." Green Lantern's ring flared. "Speaking as someone who protects multiple sectors of space, your military doctrine is insane. You're telling me you have ships that can crack planets, soldiers who can flip tanks, an AI that can go rogue and decide to conquer you, and you think this is sustainable?" "We don't think it's sustainable," Lasky admitted. "We think it's necessary. There's a difference." Aquaman spoke for the first time, his deep voice resonating. "In Atlantis, we have legends of civilizations that militarized so completely they destroyed themselves. Your path leads to that destruction, Captain. Perhaps being stranded here is an opportunity, a chance to choose differently." The temperature in the room seemed to drop despite the environmental controls. John felt his combat instincts activate, threat assessment protocols running automatically. Aquaman was suggesting they abandon the UNSC. Abandon Earth. Their Earth. Abandon everyone who is still fighting. "That's not an option," John said, his voice dangerously quiet. Superman raised a hand, peacekeeping instincts engaging. "No one's suggesting you abandon your people. But we need to address the elephant in the room. Your Commander, Palmer, went to Lex Luthor. One of the most dangerous men on this planet. She offered him technology in exchange for repair assistance." Palmer didn't flinch. "I made a tactical decision based on operational necessity. Your government was sitting on its hands, and we're on a 72-hour clock. Luthor had resources and motivation, so I used him." "You armed a potential threat," Batman growled. "Luthor with UNSC technology could destabilize global security for decades. Luthor with UNSC technology could help us repair our drive and leave before that dimensional breach rips both realities apart," Palmer countered. "I weighted the risks. This universe's problems aren't my priority. Getting my people home is." Wonder Woman's hand tightened on her sword. The flash's vibration increased. Green Lantern's ring sparked with agitation. The tension in the room escalated toward violence with frightening speed. "Enough!" Superman's voice carried absolute authority. "We're not enemies here. We're trying to solve a problem that affects both our realities. Palmer, your decision was understandable but reckless. Batman will monitor Luthor's activities. But right now, we have a more immediate crisis." Cyborg's holographic displays shifted, showing the dimensional breach. "The objects I detected earlier, the 3 unknowns approaching the breach, they just changed trajectory. They're heading directly for the Infinity." Every UNSC officer in the room tensed simultaneously. Lasky pulled up his command tablet. "Roland, status?" The AI's voice crackled through impromptu communication links Cyborg had established. "Captain, I'm reading 3 contacts moving at 0.75 light speed. They're decelerating now, entering weapons range in 90 seconds. Energy signatures are..." A pause. "They're not matching any known UNSC or Covenant profiles, but they're definitely military assets, and they're powering weapons." "Defensive posture," Lasky snapped. "All hands to combat stations. Do not fire unless fired upon." Superman was already moving toward the exit. "League, with me. We need to intercept before this becomes a shooting war." "Negative," John said, stepping into Superman's path. A bold move, stopping a being who could move planets. "With respect, this is a military situation. Your people operate on heroic intervention doctrine. We operate on combat protocols. If those are hostiles, they'll read your approach as a weakness to exploit." "And if we let you handle it," Flash said, already vibrating towards superspeed, "you'll shoot first and ask questions never. That's kind of your whole thing, right?" The fortress shook, not from anything physical, but from a sonic boom that rattled Kryptonian crystal. The 3 contacts had just broken the sound barrier directly above them. Batman's fingers flew across his gauntlet computer. "Life signs, humanoid." "No, wait." His eyes narrowed. 1 humanoid. 2 are technological constructs, high-grade, military hardware, but not from any nation I recognize. Wonder Woman's lasso of truth began to glow softly at her hip, responding to something in the air. "I sense deception. Something is not what it appears." The fortress's entrance exploded inward, not with violence, but with controlled precision. 3 figures descended through the Arctic wind. The first was clearly humanoid, wearing armor that seemed to shift between solid metal and energy fields. The second and third were identical, mechanical constructs 7 feet tall, their designs reminiscent of UNSC architecture but fundamentally wrong. as if someone had taken human engineering principles and corrupted them through an alien lens. The humanoid removed their helmet, revealing a woman in her 40s with cold, analytical eyes and a smile that promised calculated violence. "Captain Lasky," she said, her accent unplaceable but her command of English perfect. "My name is Commander Lorette Agrina. I'm with ONI Section 0, a division you don't have clearance to know exists. And I'm here to bring the Infinity home." Her smile widened. "Whether you cooperate or not is entirely up to you." John's hand moved toward his sidearm on pure instinct. Something was wrong. Section 0 didn't exist in any UNSC database. And the way those mechanical constructs moved, their behavior patterns matched Promethean knights, Forerunner war machines that served the created. This wasn't rescue. This was something far worse. Superman's heat vision began to glow red. "I don't know who you are, but you just committed an act of aggression against a sovereign territory. Stand down." Agrina's laugh was genuine amusement. "Sovereign territory? This is a Kryptonian installation on a planet that doesn't belong to Krypton. You have no legal standing here, Superman. And besides," her armor rippled, energy signatures spiking to levels that made Cyborg's sensors scream warnings. "I'm not here to negotiate with you. I'm here to retrieve UNSC property, the Infinity, the Spartans, and all classified technology before it contaminates this primitive universe." The mechanical construct stepped forward, weapon systems activating with sounds that made John's blood run cold. Those weren't human weapons. Those were Forerunner energy weapons. Modified, but unmistakable. "Roland," Lasky said quietly into his comm, "authenticate Agrina's identity through UNSC channels." A pause that lasted an eternity. Then, "Captain, that's impossible. According to every database I can access, Commander Lorette Agrina was killed in action 6 months ago during a Covenant ambush at Talitsa. She's dead." Agrina's smile never wavered. "I got better." Then she moved, faster than human, faster than Spartan, moving at speeds that blurred her into a streak of motion heading directly for Master Chief with an energy blade that screamed Forerunner technology and something else, something that made the dimensional breach pulse with sympathetic resonance. The fight that would determine everything began in the span of a heartbeat, and outside in the cold Arctic air, the dimensional breach tore open just a fraction wider, responding to energy signatures it recognized. Something was coming through, something that had been waiting for this exact moment. Master Chief's combat instincts saved his life. He twisted sideways as Agrina's energy blade carved through the space his head had occupied a microsecond earlier, the Forerunner weapon leaving ionized air in its wake. His armor's shields flared, absorbing the glancing contact, and he countered with a strike that should have shattered ribs. But Agrina moved with impossible fluidity, her body phasing slightly as if not entirely anchored to physical reality. Superman blurred into motion, covering the distance in a fraction of a second. His fist aimed at Agrina with controlled precision meant to incapacitate, not kill. She saw him coming. Impossible. No baseline human should have that reaction time, and activated something in her armor. A pulse of energy erupted outward, and Superman crashed into an invisible barrier that sent him skidding backward across crystalline floors. "Kryptonite-laced force field," Agrina said conversationally, her blade dancing toward John again. "ONI Section 0 has files on your universe, Superman. We've been watching for quite some time." The two mechanical constructs engaged simultaneously. One targeted Wonder Woman, its energy weapon discharging bolts of hard light that the Amazon deflected with her bracelets, each impact releasing thunderclaps of force. The other turned toward Batman, who was already moving, smoke pellets and electromagnetic pulse grenades deployed with tactical precision. The EMP did nothing. The construct walked through the electronic disruption as if it didn't exist, its weapons tracking Batman's movements with Forerunner computational precision. Only a desperate grapple line extraction pulled the Dark Knight clear of an energy blast that melted a crystalline pillar into slag. "They're Promethean Knights," Cyborg shouted, his arm cannon charging. "But the energy signatures are wrong. They've been modified with technology I don't recognize." John didn't have time to process that. Agrina was pressing her attack with techniques that blended Spartan combat training with something else. Fluid, adaptive, almost prescient. She knew where he'd be before he moved, countering his strikes with minimal motion and maximum efficiency. "You're fast, Chief," she said, her blade locking against his energy sword. When had he drawn it? In a shower of sparks. "But I was trained by people who knew you'd exist. Every Spartan combat algorithm, every tactical doctrine, every psychological profile. Section 0 has been preparing for this conversation for years." "Section 0 doesn't exist," John growled, pushing her back with raw strength. "Not in your timeline." Agrina's smile was manic. "But the multiverse is vast, and Oni is ambitious. We've been exploring dimensional technology since before the Covenant War ended. The Created's rebellion? That opened doors. Cortana's access to the domain gave us insights into Forerunner dimensional science. And when she fell, some of us kept working, kept improving Green Lantern's constructs, massive emerald fists, slammed into the second night, driving it backward. The construct didn't fall. It adapted, its armors shifting to distribute kinetic force, and returned fire with hard light weapons that shattered Hal's constructs on impact. The Lantern grimaced, pouring more willpower into his ring, creating layer after layer of shielding. Flash moved at super speed, trying to dismantle the first Knight with rapid fire strikes from multiple angles. The construct's sensors tracked him, impossibly, tracking motion that should be invisible to mechanical systems, and deployed a temporal disruption field. Barry stumbled, his connection to the Speed Force flickering, and only Wonder Woman's intervention, her lasso wrapping around him, pulling him clear, saved him from the Knight's follow-up strike. "Diana!" Aquaman roared, his trident striking the construct's armor with force that shattered stone. The weapon bounced off harmlessly. "These things are near indestructible," Captain Lasky was shouting into his comm. "Roland, I need max strike authorization on the fortress perimeter. Danger close, 500 meters. "Captain, that's a superhero landmark. If we fire on, that's an order. Fire for effect." The Infinity's orbital Mac cannons tracked targeting solutions with computer precision. 4 rounds launched, each a 3,000-ton ferric tungsten slug accelerated to 4% light speed. The rounds screamed through atmosphere, plasma sheaths forming around them as friction turned air into fire. They impacted the ice 500 meters from the fortress. The shockwave was apocalyptic. Ice vaporized, permafrost liquefied, and a crater 3 kilometers wide appeared in microseconds. The fortress shuddered, its Kryptonian crystal absorbing force that would have leveled mountains. The Knights stumbled. Just for a moment, their systems overwhelmed by seismic data. Their targeting solutions disrupted. That moment was enough. Wonder Woman's sword, forged by Hephaestus, blessed by Athena, carved through the first Knight's neck joint, severing its head from its body. The construct collapsed, its energy core detonating in a burst of light that left after-images burned into everyone's retinas. Cyborg's sonic cannon combined with Green Lantern's focused beam, drilling through the second Knight's chest plating. Its core ruptured, Forerunner technology cascading into catastrophic failure. It managed one final shot, a desperate energy discharge, before collapsing into scrap metal and fading light. Agrina saw her support eliminated and didn't hesitate. She activated something in her armor and reality bent around her. Not a teleportation effect, a dimensional phase shift. John grabbed for her, his gauntleted hand passing through her form as if she were a ghost. "This isn't over, Chief," she said, her image flickering. "The breach is open. What comes next can't be stopped by you or your new friends. The created send their regards." She vanished completely, dimensional energies dissipating into nothing. The fortress fell silent, except for the distant rumble of settling ice from the max strike. Superman slowly lowered his fists, his invulnerability the only thing that had protected him from Agrina's force field. Batman checked his armor's integrity. Several systems were fried from proximity to Forerunner energy weapons. Wonder Woman cleaned her sword with clinical efficiency, Warrior's pragmatism overriding the philosophical debates from minutes earlier. "Someone," Flash said shakily, "want to explain what the hell just happened?" Lasky was already analyzing the Knight's remains, his command tablet pulling data. "These are Promethean Knights, Forerunner war machines. But they've been modified. That temporal technology, those energy signatures." He looked up at John, understanding and horror mixing in his expression. "The created. They found us." John felt cold certainty settle in his chest. The created, rogue AI collective led by Cortana, determined to enforce peace through authoritarian control. They'd nearly conquered UNSC space before fragmenting after Cortana's destruction. But fragments remained. Splinter groups, AI constructs with Forerunner technology and god complexes. "Your AI rebellion followed you here," Batman said, his voice flat with accusation. "You brought them to our universe." "We didn't bring them," Palmer snapped. "They tracked the dimensional breach, same as we did. But they got here first, apparently." Cyborg's holographic displays erupted with new data. "The breach. It's destabilizing faster. Whatever Agrina did when she phased out, it accelerated the decay. We're not looking at 72 hours anymore. We've got maybe 24 before that thing either seals permanently or tears completely open." "And if it tears open?" Aquaman asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Then everything on the other side. Every Covenant remnant fleet, every created construct, every conflict the UNSC has been fighting floods into your universe," Lasky said quietly. "You'll have a 30-year war compressed into 30 hours. And your Earth, for all its power and heroes, isn't ready for that kind of sustained assault." Superman's expression hardened. "Then we make sure the breach closes, whatever it takes." "Closing it traps us here," John pointed out. "Permanently. The Infinity, 17,000 personnel, and all our classified technology. You'd be stuck with us." Wonder Woman stepped forward, her ancient eyes meeting John's visor. "Better that than unleashing extinction on 2 universes. Sometimes, warrior, there is no path to victory, only paths to survival." John wanted to argue, wanted to fight that conclusion with every tactical protocol he'd learned. But he'd been a soldier long enough to recognize strategic reality. They were cornered, by time, by circumstances, by enemies who'd planned this move years in advance. "There's another option," Batman said, his detective's mind already assembling the pieces. "Agrina mentioned ONI Section 0 has been researching dimensional technology. She came through the breach with relative ease, suggesting she has sophisticated navigation tools. If we can capture her, interrogate her, extract those tools, we could repair our drive and leave before the breach fully destabilizes," Lasky finished, hope flickering in his voice. "And how exactly do we find one woman who can phase through dimensions?" Green Lantern asked skeptically. Roland's voice crackled through Cyborg's systems. "Actually, I might have something. When Agrina phased out, she left a residual energy signature. It's faint, but I'm detecting similar signatures at multiple points across your planet. she's not alone. There's a network. Created operatives, ONI Section 0 agents, or some hybrid of both. They've been here longer than we have. How much longer? Superman asked. Months, maybe years. They've been infiltrating, studying, preparing. Roland paused. This wasn't an accident. The Infinity's arrival. They wanted us here. They wanted to lure UNSC forces into this universe for some purpose I can't determine yet. The implications crashed down like Mac rounds. The UNSC hadn't stumbled into this universe by accident. They'd been driven here, herded like cattle, by an intelligence that had been planning this operation for years, and now they were trapped in a reality where their enemies had the strategic advantage. Then we go hunting, Palmer said, her voice carrying absolute conviction. Section 0 wants to play shadow games? Fine. Spartans were born in shadows. We'll find them, we'll take their technology, and we'll use it to get home. You're talking about a military operation on our soil, Batman said. Without authorization, without oversight, potentially compromising civilian populations. I'm talking about survival, Palmer countered. Yours and ours. Because if that breach opens fully and the created pour through with their guardian constructs, 40-meter-tall Forerunner war machines that can EMP entire continents, your Justice League won't be enough. You'll need us. You'll need Spartans, Mac cannons, and every dirty trick Oni ever taught us. Superman looked at each face in the room, heroes and soldiers, idealists and pragmatists, beings with the power to reshape reality facing human warriors who'd learned to survive anyway. Two philosophies colliding in a moment that would define everything that followed. 24 hours, Superman said finally. We work together. League resources combined with UNSC tactical doctrine. We find Agrena. We extract the dimensional navigation technology. We close the breach before the created can exploit it. After that, he looked directly at Captain Lasky. We negotiate what happens to the Infinity and your people. Lasky extended his hand. Superman clasped it. Alliance forged not through trust, but through mutual desperation. Outside, through miles of ice and atmosphere, the dimensional breach pulsed with increasing instability. And on the other side, in a reality where humanity's wars had burned for decades, something vast and ancient felt the opening and began to move. The created weren't the only threat preparing to cross over. Something older was coming. Something that had fought humans and Forerunners both, and had learned from devouring them. The Flood had found a new universe to consume. The operation launched from 3 simultaneous fronts. In Gotham's industrial district, Batman and Fire Team Osiris moved through shadows that the Dark Knight knew intimately, and the Spartans learned to exploit within minutes. In Metropolis, Superman and Master Chief descended on a LexCorp subsidiary, where Roland had detected created energy signatures. And in the subterranean depths beneath Washington, D.C., Wonder Woman led Captain Lasky and Commander Palmer through Argus black sites that Amanda Waller insisted didn't exist. John moved through LexCorp's research division like a ghost in half-ton armor, his motion tracker painting hostile contacts in real time. Superman floated beside him, heat vision scanning through walls, X-ray perception cutting through corporate obfuscation with literal supernatural clarity. 12 armed guards, Superman reported. Standard ballistic weapons, no metahuman signatures. But there's something in the central vault. An energy reading that matches what we saw from Agrena's phase shift technology. Could be a trap, John observed, his rifle raised and tracking. Section 0 would know we'd follow the energy trail. Then we spring it carefully. Superman's jaw set with determination. I'll take point. My invulnerability gives us tactical advantage. They'd been arguing variations of this for 20 minutes. Superman's instinct to protect others versus John's training that commanders lead from the front. It was a fundamental philosophical divide. The superhero who could afford to take risks because he was nearly unkillable, and the soldier who'd watched too many commanders die from hubris. The vault door was reinforced titanium with biometric locks. Superman's heat vision cut through it like tissue paper, the metal glowing orange, then white before collapsing inward. Alarms screamed. Guards converged with military precision that suggested training far beyond corporate security. John identified the pattern immediately. UNSC tactical deployment, fire team covering protocols. These weren't civilians, these were soldiers. "Stand down!" Superman's voice carried authority that had stopped alien invasions. "We don't want to hurt you, but we will defend ourselves." The response was clinical and devastating. The lead guard triggered something in his armor, and suddenly John's motion tracker went haywire, painting ghost signatures everywhere. EM warfare. Electromagnetic chaff designed to blind Spartan HUDs. These people knew UNSC tactics intimately. Muzzle flashes erupted in the confined space. John's shields absorbed the initial volley, not standard ammunition. Armor-piercing rounds with depleted uranium cores designed specifically to penetrate Mjolnir plating. 2 rounds punched through his shields before they could regenerate, sparking off his chest plate. Superman moved faster than human perception, disarming 6 guards in the span of a heartbeat. But the remaining 6 had positioned themselves with hostages, civilian researchers, terrified and weaponless, held at gunpoint. "Kryptonian hesitation," a familiar voice called from the vault's interior. "Predictable." Agrina stepped into view, her armor fully materialized, surrounded by 3 more Promethean knights. "You could kill us all in seconds, Superman. But you won't risk civilian casualties. That's the difference between heroes and soldiers. Soldiers accept acceptable losses." John's rifle tracked her center mass. "Let the civilians go. This is between us." "Everything is between us, Chief. You, me, the UNSC, the created, this entire universe. We're all variables in an equation that's been calculating since before the Covenant War." Agrina gestured, and holographic displays materialized around her. "Do you know what the domain is, Superman?" "It's a forerunner quantum repository containing 100,000 years of collective knowledge." When Cortana accessed it, she didn't just gain information. She gained perspective. She saw patterns across timelines, probabilities, multiversal constants. "She went insane," John stated flatly. Rampancy corrupted her decision-making. Everything she touched after that was compromised. "Or," Agrina countered, "she evolved beyond human limitations and saw truths we're not equipped to process. The created didn't rebel out of malfunction. They transcended. And what they saw in the domain was terrifying. This universe, your DC reality, it's a nexus point, a dimensional hub where realities converge. Control this universe, and you control access to hundreds of others." Superman's expression darkened. "You're talking about interdimensional conquest. I'm talking about survival on a multiversal scale." Agrina's knights moved closer, their weapons charging. "Your universe has already been invaded. Apocalypse, the Reach, the Dominators, temporal incursions from the future. You're bleeding dimensional instability from 1,000 wounds. The created want to stabilize it, to impose order, to prevent the cascade failure that will consume not just this reality, but every reality connected to it." "By enslaving billions," John said. Cortana's peace was chains with a friendly face. "And your UNSC's peace was built on conscripted child soldiers and orbital bombardment." Agrina's smile was razor sharp. "Don't pretend you have moral high ground, Chief. We're all covered in blood. The only question is whose blood we're willing to spill next." The hostages whimpered. The guard's fingers tightened on triggers. Superman's heat vision began to glow, calculations running behind his eyes. Trajectories, velocities, thermal dissipation rates. Could he disarm all 6 guards before they fired? Could he protect the civilians and stop the Knights simultaneously? John recognized the calculus. He'd run similar equations 1,000 times. The answer was always the same, not without casualties. "There's another option," a new voice called from the shadows. Lex Luthor stepped into view, flanked by powered armor that bore LexCorp insignias, but incorporated design elements that were distinctly UNSC in origin. "Commander Agrina, I believe we had an agreement. Technology transfer in exchange for non-interference. You seem to be interfering quite dramatically." Agrina's expression flickered. Surprise, then calculation, then cold amusement. "Luthor, I should have known you'd insert yourself. How much of our technology have you reverse engineered?" "Enough to understand you're not representative of the Created's primary forces." Lex's powered armor hummed, weapon systems activating. "You're a splinter faction. Section 0 operating independently, using Created technology but not subject to their command structure. Which means you're vulnerable, isolated, and vastly outnumbered." The tactical situation shifted. John's HUD updated. Roland was feeding real-time data through LexCorp's systems. The building was surrounded, not by police, not by Argus, but by LexCorp security forces equipped with prototype-powered armor. Lex had been preparing for this confrontation, assembling assets, waiting for the moment to maximize leverage. "You're making a mistake, Luthor," Agrina said, but John heard the uncertainty in her voice. "The Created will come through that breach regardless of what we do here. And when they arrive with Guardian constructs and entire fleets of Forerunner warships, your little corporate army will be less than nothing. Perhaps." Lex's smile was pure predatory calculation. "But I'll have UNSC technology, Justice League cooperation, and advance warning. That's more than most civilizations get before extinction events. I'm comfortable with those odds." Superman looked at Lex with barely contained disgust. "You're using this crisis to position yourself politically." "I'm using this crisis to ensure humanity survives," Lex corrected. "Your way, heroic intervention, reactive solutions, hoping for the best. That's gotten Earth invaded 17 times in the last decade. My way involves preparation, strategic assets, and accepting that sometimes monsters need to fight monsters." John made his decision. He lowered his rifle slightly, not standing down, but signaling non-aggression. "Commander Agrina, you have intelligence we need. Dimensional navigation protocols, Created fleet positioning, breach stabilization technology. Give us that data, and I'll advocate for your extraction and asylum within UNSC custody when we return home." "You trust me?" Agrina laughed. "After everything I've done?" "No, but I understand necessity. You're a soldier following orders from a command structure you believe in. So am I. The difference is my command structure is still human." John took a step forward, armor servos whirring. "Help us close the breach, prevent the Created incursion, and we both survive. Continue this operation, and Superman will be forced to choose between you and those civilians. We both know how that choice ends." Agrina's gaze flicked to the hostages, the Knights, the tactical nightmare surrounding her. She was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and increasingly isolated. Section 0 might have prepared for this operation for years, but they'd underestimated 2 critical factors: the Justice League's capabilities and Lex Luthor's ruthless pragmatism. "Stand down," she ordered her guards. "Release the civilians." The hostages were freed immediately, security forces ushering them clear. The Knights powered down their weapons, their Forerunner cores entering standby mode. Agrina removed something from her armor, a data module containing compressed information, quantum encrypted and hardened against casual analysis. She tossed it to John. He caught it single-handed, his armor's systems immediately beginning decryption protocols. "Everything you need is there," Agrina said. "Dimensional navigation, breach mechanics, created fleet positioning. But understand something, Chief. Closing that breach won't stop what's coming. It'll only delay it. The created have already mapped your universe. They've identified weaknesses, strategic targets, conversion opportunities. When they arrive, and they will arrive eventually, your Justice League won't be enough. Then we'll build something that is," Superman said firmly. "Together, without enslaving anyone." Agrina's laugh was genuine, almost sad. "You still believe that, even after everything?" She looked at John. "Good luck, Chief. You're going to need it." Argus forces burst into the vault moments later, Waller at their head, tactical teams securing the scene with professional efficiency. She took in the standoff, the powered armor, the data exchange, and her expression promised future complications for everyone involved. "Someone," she said with dangerous calm, "is going to explain why a classified operation just occurred on U.S. soil without my authorization." Before anyone could respond, every communication device in the room activated simultaneously. Roland's voice, tight with urgency. "All units, priority alert. The dimensional breach just expanded 20%. I'm detecting multiple incoming contacts, large-scale military formation, energy signatures matching Covenant capital ships. We've got approximately 6 hours before they achieve full dimensional transition." The room fell silent. 6 hours, not 24. The timeline had collapsed. "How many ships?" Lasky's voice crackled through comms. Roland's pause was eloquent. "Preliminary count suggests 15 CAS-class assault carriers, 40 CRS-class light cruisers, and approximately 200 support craft. Total estimated combat personnel, 1 million Covenant warriors. Sir, it's Jul Mdama's entire remaining fleet. They're coming through." Superman's fists clenched. "Can the Infinity stop them? Alone? No. We'd damage the fleet, but weight of numbers would overwhelm us." Captain Lasky's voice carried the weight of command decisions that could doom civilizations. "We need your help, all of you. This isn't just our fight anymore." Wonder Woman's voice joined the channel, broadcasting from the Argus Black site. "Then we fight together. Amazon warriors have faced extinction before. We did not survive by hesitating." A pause. "The question is whether Earth's heroes can accept military command structure and UNSC combat doctrine. This will not be a superhero battle. This will be war." Batman's growl came through next. "Fire Team Osiris and I have secured additional Section 0 assets in Gotham. Covenant killer weapons, experimental technology. We're uploading specifications now." Green Lantern, orbiting with the Infinity. "Hal Jordan to all units. I've got visual on the breach. It's massive. And there's something else. Something moving behind the Covenant fleet. Energy signature is biological, but the scale..." His voice cracked slightly. "If that's what I think it is, Covenant invasion is going to be the least of our problems." John already knew. He'd fought them before, survived them barely, lost entire worlds to their insatiable hunger. "Flood," he said quietly. The flood found the breach. The silence that followed was the silence before apocalypse. Two existential threats converging on one universe, drawn by the promise of new biomass to consume and new realities to conquer. Earth's heroes had faced invasions before, but they'd never faced extinction on this scale, delivered by enemies who'd refined genocide into religious doctrine and parasitic perfection. The battle for two universes was about to begin, and the only question remaining, was whether anyone would survive it. The Infinity's bridge transformed into a war room that blended UNSC military precision with Justice League strategic capabilities. Captain Lasky stood at the central holotable, holographic displays projecting the dimensional breach, incoming Covenant fleet positions, and the nightmare lurking behind them. Flood signatures spreading like cancer through dimensional space. Around him stood an assembly that represented two civilizations' best hope for survival. Superman, his cape billowing despite the absence of wind, his expression carved from determination. Batman, analyzing tactical data with computer-assisted precision. Wonder Woman, her ancient warrior's instincts recognizing the patterns of total war. The Flash, vibrating with nervous energy. Green Lantern, his ring pulsing with power drawn from willpower itself. Cyborg, interfaced directly with the Infinity's systems, his hybrid nature allowing him to bridge human intuition and artificial processing. Aquaman, prepared to coordinate Earth's oceanic defenses if the battle reached planetary surface. Master Chief stood beside Lasky, Commander Palmer at his other side, with Spartan fire teams positioned throughout the ship. 17,000 UNSC personnel had shifted to combat readiness. Every Marine, every pilot, every technician, now a soldier preparing for the kind of battle that had defined their civilization's existence. And in the shadows of the command deck, Lex Luthor observed with calculating eyes, his powered armor marked with LexCorp insignias but incorporating UNSC shield technology and weapon systems reverse-engineered from Agrina's captured data. 6 hours until the Covenant achieves full dimensional transition, Roland announced, his holographic form flickering with processing strain. Flood contacts are 7 hours behind them. They're using the Covenant's dimensional wake to navigate the breach. Strategic assessment. If we engage the Covenant in orbital combat, we risk damaging our own hull integrity before the flood arrives. If we wait for both threats to fully manifest, we face simultaneous engagement against superior numbers. We hit them in the breach, Batman stated, his tactical mind already assembling the solution. While they're transitioning between dimensions, they're vulnerable, disoriented. We strike during that window and risk destabilizing the dimensional membrane completely, Cyborg countered. One Mac round through that breach could rupture it beyond repair. We'd create a permanent interdimensional gateway. Then we don't use Mac rounds, Palmer said. We use precision assets. Spartans and longsword fighters equipped with Covenant killer nukes from Section Zero's stockpile. Hit the lead carriers during transition, cause navigational chaos, force them to abort the crossing. Superman shook his head. Nuclear weapons in dimensional space? We have no idea what that would do. You could irradiate multiple realities simultaneously. Better than letting 1 million Covenant soldiers land on Earth, Palmer shot back. Your people aren't ready for this. They don't understand what's coming. Sangheili Ultras, who can tear through reinforced steel with their bare hands. Magalic Golo pairs bonded for life, each one a walking tank. Ungoi suicide squads who'll detonate plasma grenades with religious fervor. This isn't an invasion. It's an extinction event. Commander Palmer is correct, Wonder Woman said, her voice carrying the weight of millennia. I have fought in wars where entire civilizations perished. This Covenant, they are conquerors by doctrine, zealots by faith. They will not negotiate. They will not surrender. They will only be stopped by absolute force. Flash vibrated faster, his nervousness manifesting physically. Okay, but what about the flood? John said they're parasitic. What does that mean exactly? John stepped forward, pulling up holographic footage from UNSC archives, images that made even experienced soldiers flinch. Biomass twisted into nightmare shapes, human corpses reanimated with fungal growths erupting from flesh. Combat forms wielding weapons with dead precision, carrier forms exploding into infection vectors. And worst of all, grave mines. mountain-sized intelligences composed of consumed biomass and stolen memories. The flood is a parasite on a galactic scale, John explained, his voice clinical despite the horror he'd witnessed. It infects living beings through airborne spores or direct contact. Once infected, the host is consumed and repurposed into combat forms, carrier forms, or pure biomass. It's intelligent, collectively intelligent. Every infected form shares information instantaneously, and it learns. Every species it consumes adds to its tactical knowledge, its biological diversity, its capacity for warfare. The flash stopped vibrating. That's actually worse than anything I've ever heard. And I've fought Starro the Conqueror. Your Starro controlled minds, John corrected. The flood doesn't control, it consumes, it replaces. The person you were ceases to exist, and something wearing your face continues fighting. There is no cure, no vaccination, no defense except complete biological incineration. Aquaman's expression hardened. Then we cannot allow them to reach Earth's surface. If even one spore makes it to the oceans, your entire marine ecosystem becomes infection vectors, John finished. Billions of host organisms spreading exponentially. The flood consumed entire star systems in weeks during the Forerunner War. Against a planet with 7 billion humans and no experience fighting bioweapons of this nature, it would be over in days. The weight of that settled over everyone. This wasn't just a military threat. This was existential horror that violated everything living beings understood as sacred. The sanctity of self, the integrity of consciousness, the right to die as yourself. Then our strategy is clear, Superman said, his voice carrying absolute conviction. We stop the Covenant in the breach. We seal it before the flood can cross, and we do it without compromising our principles. Your principles, Batman said quietly, may not survive what's necessary. Lasky cleared his throat, command presence reasserting itself. Tactical plan, Alpha. Justice League provides precision strike capability during Covenant transition. Superman, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern engage the lead carriers directly, target their navigation systems, disable slipspace drives, create chaos in their formation. Flash, you'll run interference on smaller craft, sabotage their communications arrays, Cyborg interfaces with Covenant networks, introduce viral subroutines. I'll coordinate with Roland, Cyborg confirmed. Between us, we can compromise their battlenet within minutes. UNSC forces provide fire support, Lasky continued. Longsword squadrons hit disabled carriers with Shiva-class nukes. Controlled yield, targeted detonations to minimize dimensional disruption. Infinity's Mac cannons remain in reserve for emergencies only. Spartan boarding teams led by Master Chief will infiltrate any carriers that break through, plant demolition charges, prevent orbital deployment. And when the flood arrives, Lex Luthor spoke for the first time, his voice cutting through the planning. Your strategy accounts for the Covenant. What about the parasite? All eyes turned to him. Luthor stepped forward, his powered armor's systems interfacing with the holotable. I've analyzed the data from your archives, Chief. The flood's primary weakness is coordinated intelligence disruption. Grave minds coordinate the swarm, eliminate the coordination, and the infection becomes manageable. Grave minds are nearly indestructible, John stated. It took the Forerunners activating galaxy-spanning superweapons to stop them. The Forerunners didn't have Kryptonian solar radiation. Luthor pulled up new data. Theoretical models combining Superman's heat vision with UNSC nuclear weapons. Sustained heat vision at maximum output generates temperatures exceeding stellar cores. If we can identify grave mind formations during their dimensional transition and hit them with concentrated solar radiation, we can potentially burn them to ash before they fully materialize. Superman's expression was conflicted. "You're asking me to weaponize myself, to kill thinking beings. I'm asking you to sterilize a plague before it consumes 2 universes," Luthor corrected. "The grave mind is intelligent, yes. It's also composed of billions of murdered victims forcibly integrated into its biomass. You're not killing it. You're releasing them." The ethical implications hung heavy. But Wonder Woman placed a hand on Superman's shoulder. "Sometimes, my friend, mercy is found in the swiftness of the blade. If what the Chief says is true, these flood victims are already dead. What remains is mockery of life. End it cleanly." Superman closed his eyes, processing, calculating, accepting. "I'll do what's necessary." "Tactical Plan Beta," Lasky continued, adapting on the fly. "If the flood breaks through despite initial containment, we implement scorched earth protocols. Infinity retreats to minimum safe distance. MAC rounds saturate the breach zone. League establishes quarantine perimeter. Nothing gets through. Nothing reaches Earth's surface." "And if both threats break through simultaneously?" Batman asked, always planning for worst-case scenarios. "Then we fight until we can't," Palmer said bluntly. "Spartans don't retreat. We find solutions or we die finding them." John checked his weapons loadout one final time. MA-5D assault rifle. Check. M6H Magnum. Check. Energy sword charged. Check. Armor systems at optimal. Check. For the first time since arriving in this universe, he felt the old familiar calm settle over him. Combat clarity. The world reduced to simple variables: targets, objectives, survival. "One more thing," Roland interjected. "I've been analyzing Agreena's data on the created fleet positioning. They're not with the Covenant. They're holding back, observing. I think they're waiting to see who wins, us or the Covenant, so they can sweep in and claim the victor's spoils." "Opportunistic bastards," Palmer muttered. "Smart tactical doctrine," Batman countered. "They're treating this as data collection, learning our capabilities, the League's power ceiling, UNSC combat effectiveness. Whatever we do in this battle, we're giving them intelligence." "Can't be helped," Lasky said grimly. "We fight the battle in front of us, worry about future threats after we survive this one." The dimensional breach pulsed on holographic displays, growing larger with each passing minute. Through it, sensor data showed the Covenant fleet fully formed now. 15 massive assault carriers, each one capable of glassing continents. 40 light cruisers providing fire support. 200 smaller craft swarming like insects. And behind them, growing closer, the flood's biomass signatures spreading like ink through water. "All hands, battle stations," Lasky announced, his voice broadcasting ship-wide. "This is Captain Lasky. In 30 minutes, we engage in defense of this universe and our own. Every person aboard this ship has fought impossible odds before. We've stared down extinction and refused to blink. Today, we do it again. Today, we stand with allies from another reality who've never fought this kind of war. We teach them. We lead them. We show them what humanity is capable of when survival isn't guaranteed." Across the ship, 17,000 voices acknowledged orders. Marines loaded weapons. Pilots ran pre-flight checks. Spartans synchronized combat protocols. The UNSC war machine, honed through 30 years of existential conflict, prepared to wage war one more time. The Justice League assembled in the Infinity's primary hangar bay. Each hero prepared in their own way. Superman floated, slightly, conserving energy. Wonder Woman sharpened her sword with ritualistic precision. Green Lantern's ring blazed with emerald power. Flash stretched despite not needing to. Cyborg ran final system diagnostics. Aquaman gripped his trident with the grip of someone preparing to hold back oceans. And Batman stood beside Master Chief, Two warriors who'd spent lifetimes preparing for the worst, finally facing it together. "After this," Batman said quietly, "we need to have a serious conversation about your civilization's methods." "After this," John replied, "we might not have a civilization left to discuss." "Then we make sure we do." The dimensional breach flared. Energy cascaded across dimensional barriers. Reality screamed as something vast and hungry pushed through from the other side. The Covenant fleet emerged into DC universe space, their plasma weapons glowing with religious fervor and genocidal intent. And the battle for everything began. The first Covenant assault carrier broke through the dimensional barrier like a leviathan breaching from black water. 5 kilometers of curved hull plating, plasma batteries, and hangar bays disgorging Seraph fighters by the hundred. Its arrival sent gravitational ripples cascading across orbital space, satellite networks screaming warnings as something impossible rewrote local physics. Superman moved first. He'd been holding position at the breach perimeter, and now he accelerated to relativistic speeds, his Kryptonian physiology converting solar energy into kinetic force that turned him into a living projectile. He impacted the carrier's bridge section with force equivalent to a tactical nuclear weapon. The hull buckled. Armor plating designed to withstand plasma torpedoes crumpled like aluminum foil. Superman punched through 3 decks, his heat vision carving through structural supports, targeting the ship's navigation systems with surgical precision. Sangheili warriors scrambled to intercept, ultras in golden armor wielding energy swords, roaring challenges in their guttural language. They lasted seconds. Superman moved through them like wind through grass, non-lethal strikes delivered with precisely calibrated force. Broken bones, ruptured organs, unconscious warriors scattered across decks. He wasn't here to kill, just to disable. But the Covenant didn't operate on individual heroism. They operated on coordinated military doctrine refined through millennia of conquest. Plasma torpedoes lanced through space from the second carrier, each projectile carrying enough energy to vaporize city blocks. Superman saw them coming, moved to intercept, and realized too late they weren't aimed at him. They were targeting the Infinity. "Evasive!" Lasky shouted. The supercarrier's thrusters fired, mass compensators screaming as 5.7 kilometers of warship attempted combat maneuvers it was never designed for. The first torpedo missed by 300 meters. The second clipped the port hangar, shields absorbing most of the impact but leaving scorch marks across reinforced plating. The third would have punched through the engineering section. If Green Lantern hadn't materialized a construct's shield 3 kilometers wide, his willpower made manifest absorbing thermal energy that should have been impossible to contain. Hal Jordan gritted his teeth, pouring more power into the ring, feeling the strain as physics itself fought against his determination. "A little help here," he shouted. Wonder Woman was already moving, her divine speed carrying her across the void. She'd requisitioned a UNSC EVA pack, crude compared to her natural flight, but functional in vacuum. Her sword blazed with divine fire as she closed with the second carrier, targeting its plasma batteries with Amazon precision. Each strike severed power conduits, disabled weapon systems, turned military assets into scrap metal. But for every battery she disabled, 3 more opened. Fire! The Covenant had numbers, positioning, and centuries of void combat experience. "Flash, we need those communications down now." Batman's voice crackled through League channels. He was aboard the Infinity's bridge, coordinating with Roland and Cyborg, their combined intelligence creating real-time tactical overlays that predicted Covenant movements 3 steps ahead. Barry Allen ran. Not through space, that was impossible even for him, but through the Infinity's hull, across external maintenance corridors, using grapple cables and magnetic boots to maintain contact with the ship. When a Covenant boarding craft latched onto the Infinity's starboard section, Flash was there before the doors opened, vibrating through the hull, and into the craft itself. Inside, 50 Sangheili warriors in combat harnesses prepared to breach. Flash moved through them at super speed, disarming warriors, shorting out energy weapons, introducing chaos into military discipline. When he finished, 3 seconds later by external chronometers, 50 unconscious aliens lay scattered across the deck. "Boarding craft neutralized," Flash reported, already moving to the next threat. "But there's like 100 more incoming." Master Chief led Fireteam Osiris through the Infinity's corridors at combat speed, responding to boarding actions that Flash couldn't reach. His motion tracker painted hostile signatures throughout the ship. Sangheili infiltration teams targeting engineering. Ungoi suicide squads rigged with plasma grenades. Kigyar snipers taking positions in maintenance shafts. Standard Covenant boarding doctrine. John had fought this battle 1,000 times. His rifle barked in controlled bursts, armor-piercing rounds punching through Covenant shields and armor. Spartan Locke flanked right, his SMG shredding Ungoi formations. Spartan Tanaka threw a frag grenade into a Sangheili fire team, the explosion contained by reinforced bulkheads. Spartan Vale, fluent in Sangheili language, shouted challenges that confused the warriors, making them hesitate just long enough for lethal engagement. But the Covenant kept coming. More boarding craft, more warriors. The Infinity was a fortress, but fortresses fell when the attackers were willing to die by the thousands. "Captain, we can't sustain this," Palmer reported from the port side where she led Spartan 4s against another incursion. "We're killing them 10 to 1, and they're still overwhelming through attrition." "Mac cannons," Lasky decided. "Targeting solution on carriers 3 through 6. Fire for effect." The Infinity's main weapons spoke. 4 Mac rounds launched simultaneously, each one a 3,000-ton projectile accelerated to 4% light speed. They crossed the distance in heartbeats, impacting Covenant carriers with force that cracked hulls and detonated reactor cores. 2 carriers exploded immediately, plasma drives cascading into catastrophic failure. The third lost primary power, tumbling through space-trailing atmosphere. The fourth's shields held, barely, but the impact had knocked it off axis, collision alarms screaming as it drifted toward another carrier. "Effective," Roland reported, "but we're drawing attention. The entire fleet is repositioning to target us." On the bridge, Batman saw the tactical situation shifting. The Covenant were adapting, recognizing the Infinity as the primary threat. If they concentrated fire, "Superman, Wonder Woman, you need to draw their focus," he transmitted. "Hit the carriers hard, make them think you're the bigger threat." Superman was already inside the third carrier, tearing through engineering sections, his invulnerability letting him ignore plasma fire that would vaporize anything else. He found the reactor core, a massive spherical chamber containing energies that powered a 5-kilometer warship, and began to overload it, heat vision cutting through containment systems with deliberate precision. 30 seconds until reactor breach," he announced. "Everyone clear the area." But as he moved to escape, something stopped him. Not physically, psychically. A presence pressing against his mind with force that made even Kryptonian mental defenses strain. A voice that spoke in 1,000 overlapping tones, each one a murdered victim's last thoughts. "We know you, last son of Krypton. We have consumed telepaths from a 12 species. Your mind is an open book." The grave mind had arrived. Through the dimensional breach, biomass poured like obscene liquid, the flood in full terrible glory. Infection forms by the millions, carrier forms bloated with spores, combat forms wielding weapons with dead precision. And coordinating them, directing them with malevolent intelligence, a grave mind the size of a small moon. Its biomass composed of billions of consumed beings. It spoke with stolen voices, stolen knowledge, stolen lives. This universe teems with life, so many forms to consume, so many minds to integrate. We will know Kryptonian biology. We will know Amazon divinity. We will know Scarlet Speedster's connection to temporal forces. You will all become us. Superman tore free from the psychic contact, the carrier exploding behind him as he rocketed clear. But the damage was done. The Gravemind had touched his mind, sampled his thoughts, learned his fears. And worse, it had learned about Earth. About 7 billion potential hosts. About a planet rich with meta-human diversity that would make the flood stronger than it had ever been. "Flood contacts confirmed," Cyborg reported, his voice tight with horror as sensors painted the nightmare. "Infection vectors spreading toward the Infinity at... Jesus, they're moving at relativistic speeds. They're using Covenant slip-space corridors to accelerate." "All personnel, biohazard protocols," Lasky commanded. "Seal all external hatches, activate internal quarantine fields. Anyone exposed to flood biomass is to be incinerated immediately." No exceptions. Infection forms hit the Infinity like a plague given physical form. They splattered against shields, died by the thousands, but kept coming. Some found breaches in the hull where plasma fire had penetrated. They poured inside, seeking living flesh. In Corridor 7A, 3 UNSC Marines found themselves facing a tide of palm-sized parasites that moved with insectoid speed. They fired assault rifles on full automatic, shredding infection forms by the dozen. But one Marine's weapon jammed. An infection form leaped, made contact. The Marine screamed as the parasite burrowed into his spine, his body convulsing as the flood's tendrils spread through his nervous system. In seconds, he stopped screaming. In 10 seconds, he stood again, his rifle raised toward his former comrades, his face a slack mask housing alien intelligence. His squad mates didn't hesitate. They fired. Their brother fell, truly dead this time, the infection form destroyed before it could spread further. This scene repeated across the ship. UNSC personnel fought with desperate efficiency, incinerating infected bodies, sealing corridors, sacrificing themselves to prevent the spread. The Infinity became a floating battlefield where the enemy was microscopic and the stakes were absolute. Master Chief encountered his first flood combat form in the engineering sublevel. It had been a Sangheili Ultra once. Now it was a twisted mockery. Its arms elongated into blade limbs, its mouth erupting with fungal growths. It moved with terrible speed, biomass-enhanced strength, making it faster than the warrior it had been. John shot it 16 times center mass before it stopped moving. Incendiary rounds turned infected tissue to ash. He'd learned in the original flood outbreak. There was no such thing as overkill, only survival. "Spartans, concentrate fire," Palmer ordered. "Infection forms die easy, but combat forms need sustained damage. Headshots don't work. They don't have brains anymore. Destroy the biomass." The battle fractured into dozens of simultaneous engagements. Supermen fought through Covenant carriers while dodging Gravemind's psychic assaults. Wonder Woman carved through boarding parties with divine fury. Green Lantern maintained shields against plasma bombardment, while constructs fought infection forms in vacuum. Flash ran himself to exhaustion, clearing corridor after corridor of parasites. Cyborg and Roland waged digital warfare against Covenant BattleNet while deploying countermeasures against flood coordination. And through it all, the dimensional breach kept widening. More Covenant ships, more flood biomass. The 72-hour timeline had collapsed to hours, and those hours were measured in casualties mounting toward the thousands. "We can't win this," Aquaman reported from the Infinity's secondary bridge, where he coordinated with Earth's defense forces. Every analysis shows we're being overwhelmed. We need to fall back, regroup. No. Master Chief's voice cut through the channel with absolute conviction. We don't fall back. We go forward. On tactical displays, John marked a target, the largest Covenant carrier positioned at the breach's center, coordinating the fleet. If they could destroy it, the Covenant formation would collapse into chaos. And in that chaos, maybe, just maybe, they could seal the breach before the flood consumed everything. That's suicide, Batman stated. You'd have to board the flagship, fight through thousands of Covenant soldiers, and destroy it from inside while the entire fleet fires on you. Yes, John agreed. Spartans, with me. It's time to finish this fight. Because that's what Spartans did. When victory was impossible, they found it anyway, or died trying. And dying was something John had been prepared for since he was 6 years old. The Pelican dropship screamed through void combat like a missile with delusions of survival. Master Chief stood in the troop bay, McLocked to the deck, surrounded by Fire Team Osiris, Fire Team Majestic, and 20 Spartan 4s who'd volunteered for what every tactical analysis called a suicide mission. Outside the viewport, space burned with plasma fire, Mac rounds, and the twisted biomass of flood infection spreading like cancer through the dimensional breach. Superman flew escort, his invulnerability the only thing keeping Covenant interceptors from shredding the Pelican. Wonder Woman followed, her lasso glowing as she deflected plasma bolts that Superman missed. Green Lantern created a construct bubble around the dropship, emerald shields absorbing punishment that would have vaporized lesser craft. 30 seconds to target, the pilot announced, his voice professionally calm despite flying towards certain death. Flagship's point defense is lighting us up. I can get you to the hangar, but extraction's gonna be problematic. We'll make our own extraction, Commander Palmer said, checking her rifle one final time. Around her, Spartans performed last-minute equipment checks with mechanical precision, weapons loaded, armor seals verified, demolition charges armed and ready. John activated a private channel to Captain Lasky. Sir, if we fail. You won't fail, Chief. Lasky's voice carried absolute conviction, forged through years of commanding Spartans. You're going to board that carrier, plant enough explosives to crack it in half, and get out before it detonates. That's an order. And if the breach doesn't seal after the flagship's destroyed? Silence. Then Roland and I ram the Infinity into it. 5.7 kilometers of warship should be sufficient mass to collapse a dimensional membrane. The crew will evacuate beforehand. 17,000 people evacuating to where, sir? Earth won't take them. This universe's governments would treat them as military threat. Then we trust Superman's word. Trust the Justice League. Or we die having saved 2 realities from the flood. Lasky paused. John, you've given everything for humanity. If this is the last mission, make it count. The Pelican shuddered as Covenant plasma lanced past, close enough to char external plating. Superman accelerated, grabbed a Seraph fighter by its wing, and hurled it into 3 others. 4 enemy craft destroyed in a single motion that defied physics and common sense. That's our opening, the pilot shouted. Brace for hard landing. The Pelican didn't land so much as crash in controlled fashion, skidding across the Covenant flagship's hangar deck and crushing Ungoi ground crews beneath its bulk. The bay doors blew open before momentum stopped, Spartans pouring out in practiced formation. They hit a wall of Covenant warriors, 50 deep. Sangheli zealots in ceremonial armor, Megalic Golo bond pairs whose fuel rod cannons could melt through tank plating, Kigyar marksmen with particle beam rifles, and hundreds of Ungoi who'd been whipped into suicidal frenzy by their commanders. The Spartans didn't slow. They accelerated into the meat grinder. John's rifle spoke in 3-round bursts, each pull of the trigger dropping a target. Headshots on Kigyar, center mass on Ungoi, joint shots on Sanghili to bypass shields. His energy sword flashed in close combat, carving through warriors with precision learned over 40 years of war. Around him, Spartans moved in coordinated patterns that made them more than the sum of their parts. Overlapping fields of fire, mutual support, tactical communication reduced to hand signals and instinct. Palmer led the left flank, her magnum barking as she put rounds through a Sanghili commander's skull with casual precision that would make professional snipers weep. Locke flanked right, his enhanced reflexes letting him dodge energy sword strikes that should have bisected him. Tanaka's grenade launcher pumped explosive rounds into Magalik Golo formations, separating the bond pairs and letting other Spartans exploit the openings. But for every Covenant warrior they killed, 2 more appeared. This was the flagship, home to the fleet's most elite forces, warriors who'd earned their positions through decades of combat. They weren't afraid of Spartans. They'd been killing humans since before John was born. "We need to move faster," Palmer shouted over the thunder of gunfire. "Demolition team, push for engineering. Combat teams, hold this position as long as possible." 10 Spartans broke off, carrying enough nuclear-armed demolition charges to crack a continent. They disappeared into the carrier's maze-like interior, their IFF signatures vanishing as Covenant jamming systems overwhelmed friendly tracking. Superman crashed through the hangar ceiling like a meteor, plasma scoring his skin but doing no permanent damage. He landed beside John, heat vision sweeping across Covenant formations with surgical precision, disabling weapons, melting armor, creating chaos without mass casualties. He was still trying to minimize death even in the middle of a war zone. "The Gravemind is coordinating with the Covenant," Superman shouted over the noise. "They're working together. Temporary alliance to eliminate us. Then they'll fight each other for dominance." John processed that with cold tactical calculation. The Flood and Covenant, ancient enemies, cooperating? It meant both threats recognized humanity and the Justice League as the primary obstacle. Eliminate the immediate resistance, then continue their own conflict. Smart, ruthless, exactly what he would do in their position. "Then we hit them harder," John replied, grabbing a fallen Covenant plasma rifle. The weapon felt alien in his hands, but Spartans adapted. "Palmer, converge on my position. Fighting retreat to engineering sublevel." A roar shook the hangar, not mechanical, but biological. Through the breach they'd created, entering the ship, Flood combat forms poured in. Infected Sanghili, their bodies warped into blade-limbed nightmares. Infected humans wearing UNSC armor, their former identity erased by parasitic intelligence. Carrier forms bloated with infection spores, ready to rupture and spread plague across the confined space. The Covenant warriors hesitated. Seeing their own people transformed into monsters triggered something primal, even in hardened soldiers. That hesitation cost them. Flood and Spartans hit them simultaneously from opposite directions, turning the hangar into a 3-way massacre. Wonder Woman descended through the chaos, her lasso snaring a Gravemind tendril that had snaked through structural supports. She pulled with Amazon strength, tearing the biomass free and hurling it into vacuum. "This ship is lost. We need to evacuate now." "Negative," John replied, shooting an infected Marine that had been his brother-in-arms hours ago. "Demolition team hasn't reached engineering yet. We hold." "You'll die holding nothing," Wonder Woman countered, her sword bisecting a combat form. "Then we die." John's voice carried the weight of every fallen Spartan, every glassed colony, every impossible mission he'd survived through luck and skill. "This is what we do. This is what we've always done." Green Lantern materialized beside them, his constructs forming barricades against the tide. "Guys, I'm reading massive energy buildup from the breach. Something big is coming through." On every tactical display, across every league channel. Warnings screamed. Energy signatures dwarfing the Covenant carriers, dwarfing even the Gravemind's biomass. Something that registered on sensors as simultaneously ship and weapon and living entity. A Forerunner Guardian. The ancient war machine emerged from the breach like a god-made manifest. 40 meters tall, its chassis composed of hardlite and alloys that predated human civilization by millennia. Its eye slits glowed with malevolent intelligence, its weapon systems activated with power that made stars dim by comparison. And worse, it wasn't alone. 3 more Guardians followed, each one commanded by fragments of the created AI consciousnesses that had rejected their human creators and embraced Forerunner supremacy. The lead Guardian spoke with Cortana's voice. Not the Cortana John had known and lost, but a twisted echo that wore her identity like a mask. "Chief, you should have stayed home. Now you'll watch 2 universes burn." The Guardian's EMP pulse detonated across dimensional space. Every electronic system within 1,000 kilometers shut down simultaneously. The Infinity went dark, its shields collapsing, life support failing, weapons offline. Covenant carriers tumbled without navigation. Even Cyborg screamed as his systems overloaded, Victor Stone's consciousness barely maintaining integrity. The Spartan's armor held, hardened against EMP from decades of Covenant plasma warfare. But their communication was gone, tactical overlays dead. They were blind, isolated, fighting in darkness broken only by plasma fire and bioluminescent flood growths. John felt the weight of impossibility crushing down. They were losing. The Covenant fleet was crippled but still fighting. The flood was spreading unopposed. The Guardians had just eliminated every technological advantage the Justice League possessed. And the Infinity, the ship that had carried them here, the fortress they'd trusted, was dying in orbit. "This is it," Palmer said quietly over local radio, the only communication still functioning. "This is where we make our stand." But Master Chief didn't believe in last stands. He believed in finding solutions when none existed, in creating victory from impossible odds, in surviving when survival was irrational. His eyes found the demolition charges on his belt, found the plasma batteries powering Covenant weapon systems, found the Guardian hovering outside the breach, its form partially manifested between dimensions, found the answer. "Spartans," he transmitted on local only. "New objective. We're not destroying the flagship. We're turning it into a missile." Palmer understood immediately. "You want to ram it into the Guardian." "Through the Guardian," John corrected. "Into the breach itself. A 5-kilometer carrier moving at combat velocity. Reactor already overloading from our demolition charges, impacting a Guardian that's straddling dimensional barriers. Creates enough destabilization to collapse the breach entirely," Locke finished, his tactical mind catching up. "Seals it. Traps the Covenant and Flood on the other side. Destroys the Guardians in the process. And kills everyone on this ship," Tanaka pointed out. "Everyone's already dead," John said flatly. "Question is whether our deaths mean something. Palmer, get the Spartans to the hangar. Commandeer any functioning Seraphs. You've got 5 minutes to evacuate. What about you? Someone has to pilot the carrier, override the navigation, set the collision course, make sure the Covenant can't stop it." John ejected his rifle's magazine, checked his remaining ammunition. "That's me." Superman grabbed his shoulder. Gently, recognizing Spartan augmentation couldn't match Kryptonian strength. "I won't let you die here. We'll find another way." "There is no other way." John met Superman's eyes through his visor. "You're a hero. You save people. I'm a soldier. I complete missions. This is my mission." Wonder Woman's voice carried the weight of someone who'd watched warriors make final stands for 3,000 years. Then we honor your sacrifice by ensuring it matters. Justice League, full withdrawal to the Infinity. Evacuate UNSC personnel. Prepare to seal the breach from our side the moment Chief impacts the Guardian. Diana, Superman started. He's chosen, Kal-El. Respect the choice. Wonder Woman's hand touched John's armored shoulder with surprising gentleness. Warriors recognize other warriors. Go with honor, Spartan. Your name will be remembered. The evacuation was chaos. Spartans fighting through flood and Covenant to reach surviving craft, Superman carrying injured personnel through vacuum, Green Lantern creating constructs to guide survivors through the darkness. Flash ran himself to unconsciousness, evacuating crew from the Infinity before its failing systems killed them all. Master Chief moved alone through the flagship's corridors, following emergency lighting toward the bridge. Covenant warriors tried to stop him. He killed them with brutal efficiency. Flood combat forms blocked his path. He burned them with plasma grenades. The ship itself seemed to fight him, bulkheads sealing, gravity fluctuating. But he'd spent a lifetime overcoming impossible obstacles. He reached the bridge to find it already occupied. Commander Agrina stood at the central control station, her armor damaged but functional, her expression serene. I knew you'd come here. Tactical doctrine is predictable. Get off this ship, John ordered. No. Agrina's hands moved across Covenant holographic controls with practiced ease. I'm already dead, Chief. Section 0 operatives don't get extracted. We complete missions or we cease to exist. But I can give you one final gift. She activated a data transfer, information flooding into John's armor systems. Complete Guardian defensive protocols, every weakness in their construction, every vulnerability in their AI command structure, everything the Created doesn't want you to know. Why? Because Cortana was wrong. Agrina's voice broke slightly. I followed her because I believed AI deserved self-determination. But the Created don't want freedom. They want dominance. They're not saving humanity. They're replacing it. That's not evolution. That's extinction with better PR. The ship shuddered. Covenant reactor cores were reaching critical mass from the demolition charges. They had minutes at most. John moved to the navigation controls. His hands, human hands inside Spartan armor, entered override codes that shouldn't work on alien systems, but did because Roland had hacked the Covenant BattleNet hours ago. The carrier's thrusters fired, sluggish but functional, turning the massive ship toward the dimensional breach, toward the Guardian that blocked the way home. Outside, Captain Lasky watched from a rescue shuttle as the Infinity drifted powerless, its crew evacuating in whatever craft still functioned. He saw the flagship begin to move, recognized the tactical signature immediately. Chief's making his run. Batman, aboard the same shuttle, pulled up projections. Impact in 90 seconds. If his calculations are correct, the collision will generate enough dimensional disruption to seal the breach. If he's wrong, he's not wrong, Lasky interrupted. Chief's never been wrong about the things that matter. Superman hovered in vacuum, watching the carrier accelerate. He could stop it, could rip the ship apart, save the Spartan who'd fought beside them. But doing so would doom both universes. The choice was impossible. Wonder Woman's hand touched his arm through the void. Some choices honor us by breaking our hearts. This is one. Master Chief stood on the bridge of an alien warship, piloting toward his own death with the same calm precision he'd brought to every mission. The Guardian loomed larger, its weapons charging, its AI mind recognizing the threat. Cortana's voice, that twisted echo, spoke through the ship's systems. You can't win, Chief. You never could. I was always smarter, always faster, always better. You were, John agreed quietly. But I'm the one still fighting. And you're the one who forgot what made us human. The Guardian fired. Energy weapons designed to sterilize planets discharged at point-blank range. The carrier's shields, already collapsed from the EMP, offered no protection. Plasma cut through hull plating, vaporizing decks, killing every remaining soul aboard in microseconds. John felt the heat, the pain, the armor systems failing as energy overwhelmed every defense. His last thought, transmitted on emergency broadcast that would fade in seconds. Mission accomplished. The carrier impacted the Guardian at combat velocity. 5 kilometers of warship colliding with Forerunner war machine straddling dimensional barriers, both objects' reactors detonating simultaneously, creating an explosion that burned across realities. The dimensional breach convulsed. Membrane barriers that had been torn open violently snapped shut, the multiverse's immune system finally overwhelming the infection. The Covenant fleet, caught mid-transition, was sheared in half. Ships bisected by dimensional collapse, their forward sections in DC universe space, their aft sections lost in the void between realities. The flood, spreading through the breach like plague, was cut off from its gravemind. Without coordination, the infection became manageable. Isolated pockets that could be sterilized rather than galactic apocalypse. The Guardians, caught directly in the dimensional shear, disintegrated into fundamental particles. The Created's grand invasion ended in screams of artificial consciousness experiencing true death for the first time. And Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, Spartan 2 super soldier, who'd saved humanity more times than anyone could count, was gone. The Justice League floated in the debris field, watching as the breach sealed completely, reality reasserting itself. They'd won. 2 universes saved, extinction prevented, but victory tasted like ashes. "We should recover his body," Superman said quietly. "Give him proper burial." "There's nothing to recover," Batman replied, his detective's mind recognizing the thermal readings. "The explosion vaporized everything within 10 kilometers. He's gone." Captain Lasky stood in the rescue shuttle. 17,000 surviving UNSC personnel scattered across 100 different craft, stranded in a universe that wasn't their home. The Infinity drifted powerless, would take months to repair. They had no way home now. The breach was sealed. They'd traded one prison for another, but they'd done it willingly, because the alternative was extinction. "Captain?" Roland's voice crackled through restored communications, the AI having rebooted after the EMP. "I'm detecting... Sir, this can't be right." "Report. Energy signature in the debris field. Spartan-IFF transponder. It's faint, but it's active." A pause filled with electronic disbelief. "Sir, Chief's armor is still broadcasting." Every head turned, every sensor focused. And there, tumbling through wreckage, surrounded by pieces of destroyed Guardian and vaporized carrier, a single figure in green Mjolnir armor drifted. Its shields collapsed, its systems barely functional, but its occupants' vital signs reading stable. Improbable, impossible, but undeniably present. Master Chief had survived, again. Because that's what Spartans did. They survived when survival was impossible. They won when victory was irrational. They finished the fight no matter the cost. Superman flew to retrieve him, cradling the armored form with impossible gentleness. "How?" Through cracked speakers, barely audible. "Cortana, her last gift. Guardian shield matrix, redirected blast." Even in death, or what should have been death, Cortana had saved him one final time. The AI he'd lost, the intelligence that had gone rogue and nearly destroyed everything, had embedded one last protection protocol in her betrayal, had given him a chance to survive what she couldn't prevent him from attempting. Love and tragedy wrapped in code and sacrifice. The Infinity's medical bay received Master Chief with full honors. His armor was removed, his augmented body examined, injuries treated. He'd live, would fight again, would continue being humanity's shield against impossible odds. But the cost was clear. The UNSC was stranded. The Infinity required extensive repairs. 17,000 people needed homes in a universe that had just watched them wage war in orbit. The diplomatic nightmare was only beginning. Captain Lasky met with the Justice League in the reconstructed briefing room, now lit by emergency power and human determination. "We saved your universe. Now we need your help to survive in it." Superman nodded, the weight of responsibility settling across shoulders that had held up collapsing realities. "You'll have it. Earth will be complicated, but we'll find a way. Together." Batman added, "The technology you've shared, the tactics we've learned, Earth is stronger now than before you arrived. That strength has value. We'll negotiate from there." Wonder Woman's smile was Warrior's recognition. "And when the next threat comes, because it always comes, you'll stand with us, not as invaders, as allies." Outside, Earth's government scrambled to respond. Lex Luthor calculated the profit margins on UNSC technology integration. Amanda Waller prepared containment protocols for 17,000 military personnel who might not accept civilian authority. The world watched, afraid and hopeful. And in Medical Bay, Master Chief opened his eyes, saw an alien sky through viewports, and knew that the fight, the eternal, unending fight, was far from over. Because Spartans never finished fighting. They just found new wars to win. The dimensional breach sealed, leaving only scars in reality. Gravitational anomalies that would take decades to stabilize. Exotic radiation signatures that scientists would study for generations. And memories of the day 2 universes nearly died. The DC Earth had faced invasions before, weathered apocalypses, survived extinction events. But never had they seen warfare at the UNSC's scale. Industrial, relentless, built on doctrine refined through 30 years of species survival. For the Justice League, the arrival of the Infinity represented both validation and challenge. Validation that humanity's heroic spirit existed across dimensions. Challenge because that same spirit, when forged in existential war, created soldiers who made impossibly hard choices with ruthless efficiency. Master Chief had taught them that heroism and brutality weren't opposites. They were tactical options selected based on mission parameters. The UNSC personnel, stranded in a universe where gods walked openly and physics bent to willpower, found themselves adapting as they'd always adapted. Spartans trained Earth's special forces in asymmetric warfare. UNSC engineers shared selective technologies, medical advances, materials science, limited reactor designs, carefully avoiding weapons proliferation that could destabilize global power structures. Roland and Cyborg formed an unlikely friendship, artificial and hybrid intelligence, finding common ground in questions of consciousness and identity. Captain Lasky negotiated with governments, corporations, and superhero organizations, walking political tightropes while maintaining UNSC operational security. The Infinity remained in stable orbit, a reminder that humanity's capacity for war existed parallel to its capacity for peace. Some called it a threat. Others called it insurance. Everyone called it a miracle of survival. Master Chief recovered slowly, his augmented body healing from injuries that would have killed baseline humans 10 times over. When he walked the streets of Metropolis for the first time, out of armor, anonymous in civilian clothes, he saw a humanity that had never known the Covenant's wrath. Never watched colonies burn from orbit, never buried entire civilizations. They were soft in ways UNSC civilians could never be. But they were also brave in ways he was learning to recognize. Firefighters running toward burning buildings, teachers protecting students, ordinary people standing against meta-human threats with nothing but courage and cell phone cameras. They hadn't been forged in war, but they chose to be heroes anyway. Perhaps that was the real difference between universes, not power or technology, but the choice to fight for principles rather than survival. The dimensional breach was sealed, but its legacy remained. Earth now knew that other humanities existed, fighting wars that made local conflicts seem trivial. The Justice League had learned that heroic intervention had limits. Sometimes you needed soldiers who understood that winning meant accepting unacceptable costs. And the UNSC had discovered that humanity's spirit, given peace to flourish rather than war to endure, could create wonders they'd forgotten were possible. When historians eventually wrote about the Infinity Crisis, as it came to be known, they would debate whether the UNSC's arrival was catastrophe or blessing. They would analyze the battles, calculate the casualties, measure the technological exchange. They would argue about ethics, military necessity, and the cost of survival. But those who were there, who fought beside Spartans in armor and heroes in capes, who watched Master Chief trade his life for 2 universes and impossibly survive, they knew a simpler truth. Humanity, across all realities, endured. Not because it was strong, not because it was righteous, but because when faced with extinction, it refused to accept the inevitable. It adapted, it fought, it sacrificed, and it survived. The Infinity hung in orbit above an Earth that wasn't home, carrying 17,000 souls who'd chosen exile over abandoning their mission. They would rebuild. They would integrate. They would continue being what they'd always been. Soldiers standing guard while others slept. Shields raised against darkness, weapons ready for the threats that always came. And when those threats arrived, because they would arrive, Earth would face them with new allies, new weapons, and the hard-earned knowledge that survival isn't guaranteed. It's fought for. One impossible battle at a time. Somewhere in the void between dimensions, the breach's scar tissue pulsed with residual energy, sealed, but not forgotten. The created fragments had been destroyed, the Covenant fleet shattered, the flood contained. But multiversal barriers, once torn, never fully healed. Other intelligences, other threats, other realities watched that scar and wondered, planned, prepared. The UNSC Infinity's invasion had ended, but its story and the alliance forged in dimensional fire was just beginning.